So, guys, today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite space chicken, Boomkins, balanced druids. And like before, I figured, what better way to do it than get three of the most badass balanced druid players. Unfortunately, one of them couldn't make it though, so Tettles is here. But nonetheless, everybody is here, guys. Why don't you give a quick intro to yourselves? Gabe, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I don't know what more you want than that, man. What's
Okay.
up?
Yeah, he exists. That's all you need to know.
You good, Gabe?
Full of
Oh
words.
yeah, we're great.
Sang?
I'm saying Moonkin, a Moonkin of complexity limit, big mount collector, the only mount collector in the guild because everyone's too casual to play at my advanced level, but it's just how it is.
I like mounts. What the heck?
Yeah, you suck.
All right, a lot of love already. Tettles.
I guess I would be described as the male version of Nagura, definitely according to Sloot as well. Whenever you have to think of a Sloot pun, it's related to Moonkin, it's either at Nagura, myself, or both of us together.
Perhaps. True. Guys, welcome. Thanks a lot for taking the time. I know it's a bit early. Usually do these shows in the afternoon, but we all, well, except for Tettles, I suppose, because he said no, but we all have raid testing to do otherwise, and we wanted to not hurry the show too much. So nonetheless, we had to start a bit earlier today. So welcome. We are here to talk about everything Moonkin. And as you guys kind of saw in the doc, if you've seen any of these shows already, we usually start with like a bit of history just to kind of place context on, well, why Boomkin is where it is, what's wrong with it or what's right with it, and really kind of where the problems or where the good things started. And usually the best place to do this is Legion, just because Legion had a lot of those major revamps to a lot of specs, some more than others. So let's find out then where on the totem pole balance stood in those kind of rehashes, whoever wants to tackle this.
So I think in the post,
go ahead.
So I think in the post Warlords of Draenor era, like moving straight into Legion, balance got a change to its core system, which was historically Eclipse, where it was like that. In Warlords, we had like the alternating Eclipse states where you would just passively alternate between lunar and solar, and then moving into Legion, it got changed to being a builder spender with astral power.
That was the only major stuff that happened.
Yeah, that was like the only major thing that happened, but I think part of I would say one of the biggest things that happened, I think, is that it was actually designed, the core of the spec and like the builder spender itself was actually designed pretty heavily around the Legion systems, in mind, being the legendaries and the artifact weapon, to where there are still a large amount of remnants of how the current builder spender works for balanced druid based on things that like were Legion legendaries or Legion artifact traits.
Okay. And was this like how did that work out? Was this like a successful change in terms of resource redesign?
In my opinion, in combination with like all the artifact traits, legendaries and whatnot, I really feel like Moonkin in Legion actually felt pretty well in all aspects of the game. I think the artifact weapon specifically gave moons as well. So you had plenty of astral power generation to play with. You had plenty of actual damage amp on a lot of your spells that they were meaningful. And there was a couple mechanics too that were part of it that really just made everything of the spec feel like it was part of the spec and work. And that's one of the big things that I've seen come out of Legion, was in Legion, but when they took that away, that's when you started seeing some problems with parts of the spec just no longer being a meaningful thing. So that's my take on that.
So throughout Legion, then it was mostly good. Were there any major shortcomings in the core of its build? Was it particularly weak or crappy at anything, or is it was just like a good solid spec for the most of Legion?
Single target was a little weird.
It was a little low on single target, but I think that it got made up for by the fact that it did almost twice the damage once you added a second target.
Oh yeah, Start falling in two targets felt great. and we're kind of doing that again in Shadowlands.
And that's one of my like views too of Moonkin is I view it a lot more as like it has dots. It's a multi-dot spec. You know, when a second target, third target comes into play, that's when you feel like your class should really like activate.
Allegedly a multi-dot spec.
Yeah, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Look, that comes up soon, but yeah. I mean, I say like with the not the best single target, but the spec isn't like to me it was like not really supposed to be, you know, just a pure single target spec. I was perfectly fine with it, pretty much during Legion.
It was really bad. Like the cooldowns were absolutely abysmal, but it had a large amount of sustained single target and AoE damage to be able to kind of make up for that fact that it was lacking in cooldowns. And I felt like astral power pooling was also really important back then as well, and that kind of gave you pseudo burst in short intervals, like the 5 to 8 second range if you could pre-pool astral power. Like I think back and I think about Vera Mathras as like a prime example of something like that, where you could just pool up as much astral power as you wanted and just dump it into the ads.
Kind of got worse throughout the expansion though. They added the class was already kind of like ramp, right? They added that ramp trait that made you have to have Moonfire and Sunfire in the target to do like it's like 12% extra damage with Star Surge or something. So it actually made our target swapping worse like midway through the expansion. It's kind of annoying.
But yeah, historically, I would say strong sustained damage, really strong target swapping is most of what makes Moonkin Moonkin. And then, like Sang said, 2 targets, 3 targets is like where it really starts to activate. And then beyond, it's like really sick.
All right. So Legion mostly good, right? We don't usually we have to kind of go down the track record of Legion a bit more, and kind of some patches are better than others, but for the most part, sounds like Moonkin was generally okay in Legion, in large part due to legendaries and artifact ?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that was the most fun I've had playing Moonkin in a
Yeah,
while.
it was really really fun to do dungeons on, to do stuff out in the world. It was just, I mean, just about everything about it. To me, it was just really fun. Obviously, I think some beginning of Legion stuff was a little rough, just because it like in my personal experience, the helmet legendary Dreamcatcher that I never got during the first 2 tiers of that expansion. It was like it was so good, but I just didn't have it. So it was like a little.
Well, that was scuffed.
Well, that was my first one. That was a banger.
I think obviously, yeah, some really big things that didn't work out. But I mean, that's what it was really minor in my opinion.
So did you guys play, just out of curiosity, did you guys play Boomkin like before Legion as well, WoD MOP days?
Yeah, I've been Moonkin since I started playing.
So what did you
Which
think?
Kata.
Did you like the playstyle back then a bit more than Legion, or did you like favor the Legion kind of revamp?
My opinion, like I think I didn't necessarily dislike Moonkin either. In Warlords, it was okay going into Legion. It was like I mean, in general, I think it got better in Legion for sure. I wouldn't say it was even at a bad state though in WoD. So I mean, it just only got better, I think.
I'd say, like most classes, Moonkin was at its peak in MOP. The game's kind of just been downhill from there.
I didn't play in Mist, so I can't relate. I started in Warlords.
I think
the Legion was great, but
Mist Moonkin was pretty fun. I think it maybe was a little excessive with dot target spam Star Surge, but you know what? I mean, sometimes that's fun. You just gotta love it.
Find me a single Moonkin player who played back then who didn't like machine gunning Star Surges. one single person.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
Tettles
I got really mad when I had like 3 seconds without a Star Surge proc. It made me so mad.
I love seeing Tettles laugh, but he's like muted. So he looks like he's just like maniacally just like crazy by himself in the corner.
Bro, you don't gotta flame me like that. So.
It's not really flame, just saying. All right, so for the most part, Legion was okay from what I'm hearing. Nothing crazy. Obviously, everybody wants everything to be perfect for every spec. Some of it's meant to have weaknesses by Blizzard design. Some of it unfortunately has weaknesses without design implementation. But it sounds like Moonkin wasn't really like there was nothing super awful about them. But then BFA came, right? So what happened in BFA that turned the tides a bit. You guys mentioned, well, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that they're very heavily reliant on their artifact and legendaries, right? So losing both of those things in BFA, I guess, was a no-no.
Yeah,
Oh, you can go.
okay, yeah. I would say that basically, as I kind of briefly mentioned, is like losing the artifact made like everything of the spec feel like it worked, and I feel like the removal of a lot of that stuff and nothing was really added. But Azerite was kind of imbalanced the spec. It basically made our dots completely useless. They did a couple nerfs on stuff based on Legion that were based on Legion, but then they so the nerf plus the removal of that stuff just kind of double dipped into making something like, again, our damage over time effects just worthless, and a couple other things like scenarios like that just come up.
I think part of it too, do you guys remember this? We got the absolute last complete redesign on like the final hour right before BFA was shipped too. We got like a half redesign maybe 3 weeks before pre-patch.
I wouldn't even call it a redesign.
I mean, they like changed a bunch of our talents, right? It was a half redesign. I don't think it was like that big, but
yeah, they changed talents. They made it so that when you cast like filler, like Wrath or Starfire, that you could get empowerments with the other one. It's like a 20% chance or something.
Because they hated the clip of Nagura casting 10 Wraths in a row or whatever.
Yeah, which was just the most meaningless change, because you already, like, empowerments were already the least important part of the kit. And like, if you had to make any concessions between like overriding empowerments or like capping AP or whatever, you don't even think twice about it. You just use your AP. Like, you don't care at all about overcapping empowerments. They're so worthless. Add nothing to the class.
Okay. So were there throughout BFA then, were there any major changes to like alleviate some of the issues that we started with BFA? I mean, I know, for instance, the entire expansion, Starfall is a huge meme. Like, Tettles was all over that, all over social. Everybody was all over that. So aside from that, I suppose, was there anything done at all, or was it just kind of at least attempted to be passively fixed through, like, borrowed power with essences and corruption and swept under the rug?
I'd say the opposite, actually. I'd say...
Really?
I'd say they did nothing but make the spec worse as the expansion went on.
I think weird. They tried. I don't know if I necessarily said they did a great job.
I actually feel like the spec didn't change at all, right? Like,
okay.
I think that the spec really got nothing, and the only thing it got was what everyone else got, which was essence and more Azerite traits, right?
Let me present this. They buffed Streaking Stars to where coming into BFA, we had no relevant Azerite to play. Like, literally, it was all bad. Like, we played Lively Spirit. That's how bad all of our Azerite was. They buff up Streaking Stars. They give us Arcanic Pulsar, which at least does more than 0. But obviously, Gabe's arguments that it made it worse. But
and my argument is those are like Azerite specific. It didn't really add anything to the actual class.
I can explain why it made it worse, but I'll let you finish.
I'm gonna let you finish.
I just thought that as a whole, it made it slightly better than it was in Uldir. I don't think it was a lot better.
Okay, here's the history of Moonkin and BFA from start to finish. So we start the expansion. We're using a Reso Druid Azerite trait. That's our best one. Blizzard obviously doesn't like that. I don't think a lot of people like that. I don't think any of you like that. Having to
bad,
attach yourself to a healer battery to do any sort of meaningful damage. Also, keep in mind, I don't know if you remember, but at the start of the expansion, we had Starfall on like 3 or 4 targets. So the introduction of everything that, like, Pulsar and Vision of Perfection and, like, the emphasis on Streaking Stars that ruined Starfall. So they take away Lively Spirit, and instead of, like, buffing the aura of the class, like, buffing everything that we did, to compensate for nerfing Lively Spirit, they add Pulsar, and they buff Star Surge, only Star Surge. So now they've basically double buffed Star Surge. Starfall and our dots are still in the dumpster. And they never did anything to change that throughout the whole expansion. Arcanic Pulsar felt good to play on single target, and I really enjoyed that. And so does Shrieking Stars, obviously, but we have no scaling past 1 target. whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it only got
Yeah.
worse with Vision putting more emphasis on Shrieking Stars damage. And then, like, we just don't have any scaling. It's just so bad.
I mean, those changes basically just further punished you for casting Starfall, and that's why, like, that spell got even worse and worse as it went on.
And then they nerfed our dots after Eternal Palace.
Yeah, actually, yes.
Like, how does that happen?
Do you really
No,
want to
Do
know?
any damage?
Do you really want to
Okay,
know?
Dude, I think it's just hilarious that they look at Moonkin. They're like, you know what this class needs? It's not a buff to Starfall. It's not a change to like how many targets you're star searching on. It's a nerf to their dots. That's really what the goal is here.
So why do you? I guess let's dive into it a bit. Then I'm gonna assume for a second here that the Boomkin community gave feedback and blah 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 throughout all of BFA. It's not like Blizzard didn't know, right? Like the direction that you guys wanted to go or the feedback that you had based on their changes. So what was like? Do you think that Blizzard was kind of headed, like the devs were headed in a direction and a vision for Boomkin that just never really like worked out? Like maybe did they nerf the dots because they wanted them to focus more on direct damage for like single target burst or sustain or something? Like I don't know, whatever it is. There must have been some intent there. It's not like they were doing too much damage.
I think like the dot nerf in Eternal Palace, as far as I know, was it's really hard to actually understand. But like from the wording of it, they essentially just wanted to nerf all multi-dotting, and I guess Moonkin got lobbed into that somehow. As like because that was the same time they nerfed Shadow Priest dots and some Warlock dots as well. I just remember that, and the description given was just like they wanted to nerf some multi-dotting specs were overperforming on multi-target fights, and so they just nerfed all of them across the board. And again, Moonkin got included in that, so I was a little that's my understanding basically.
Yeah, Jim was told to nerf multi-dotting after Eternal Palace, and he looked at his class guide, and it's like, well, it says here that Moonkin is a multi-dot spec, so I guess I'll nerf their dots. Without looking at like the damage that they actually did and seeing that it was like already only 10% of our damage out of Eternal Palace.
Dude, I don't even describe Moonkin as a multi-dot. We're just a builder spinner that has dots that they feel so non-fluid with the class.
Okay. Not Tettles. I mean, no better time than now. How do you feel about Starfall? Non-memeingly so. Like, why were you so upset about it all expansion?
If I could go the rest of my life without star searching on AoE again, I absolutely would take it. It's okay. So more or less
for you.
Yeah, shit. More or less, the problem with it was that it was just in such a sad state of affair and had literally no target scaling for so long, and there was direct feedback that they wanted to move more classes towards starting their AoE on 3 to 4 targets, going from Legion into BFA. And Starfall, like we said, feels way better whenever it's used on 2 targets more often than not. And so then like we start off Uldir, Starfall is used on 4 targets with Twin Moons being talented, and then it just snowballed completely out of control to where it was just not usable. And then at some point you start Starfalling 7 targets and you're like, well, this is just the worst ability I've ever used.
And it was just not touched for 2 years. Like
I hold on, I'll give you an exact date if you want. I think it's been over 600 days, I want to say at this point.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen a hot fix in BFA that had the word Starfall in its name for a very long time.
Surely on purpose, right? With good intent in mind, I'm sure.
No clue what goes behind the scenes.
Okay, so moving towards the end of while Tettles looks that up, moving towards the end of where we are now, right? The end of BFA, on the doorstep of Shadowlands, and knowing that we're gonna lose Azurite, we're gonna lose essences, we're gonna lose corruption. What do you guys see as the major flaws of the spec moving into Shadowlands? Like, we'll get to the Shadowlands changes later, but what are like the core issues with Boomkin? What are they lacking? Obviously, I guess Starfall is a point of contention here, but what is it? What makes them like just not very attractive in some areas, or attractive? Like, what do you guys think?
Lack of a raid buff, I think, is one of the things that's really strange, especially in the current state of the game. You have some classes like mage that bring AI, priests that bring fort. Like, there's just a bunch of classes that are mandatory somewhat, and then Moonkin, being the weakest of multi-daughters, also doesn't fill that niche like that well, and typically will end up getting overshadowed by some of the more powerful ranged at warlocks.
At mages.
What do you guys think, Sang? Gabe?
You're talking about going into the next expansion, right?
It's more like the current design of Moonkin at the end of BFA, knowing that also you're gonna you guys are like, our scaling's poor, but corruption kind of
before Shadowlands changes. Is that? Yeah, I mean, if you took out like all of the systems of BFA and just left Boomkin as it is, what does it actually have? I can't even think of it. Like
Starfall?
Its entire damage toolkit right now relies on Azurite and essences, and other than that, you just have the most basic builder spender class with 2 slightly more damaged effective globals in Moonfire and Sunfire, and an AoE that does noodle damage.
So the utility of balance is really strong, it being Druid utility, but it's not normally that great geared towards raid. Innervate is actually very powerful, and Innervate coming off the GCD2 is a nice change, but is that enough to warrant a raid spot ever, unless it's just overtuned? I think the answer is more often than not no.
I mean, Innervate is basically the one unique thing that I think Moonkin has, because, if you're thinking Battle Res, Warlock has that. Moonkin doesn't bring a buff. Most types of CC, like, that you'd ever maybe use in a raid, you, like, Typhoon being the one, and then maybe, a single target stun. Like, other classes have that kind of stuff.
We have Roar going into Shadowlands too.
This is before Shadowlands.
Yeah.
Before Shadowlands, I don't know why you ever bring a Moonkin. I don't do anything. It's like, you don't ever... When's the last time you sat down, thought about like a raid encounter, and are like, I really need Innervate for this fight to succeed? Like, no one has ever said that.
Restless Cabal was the last time I ever saw Moonkin get brought due to its raid utility, and that's because it's so just tanky at its core, and like we were
just avoidance cap off Azurite.
Yeah, range tanking the Cabal caster was the last time I've seen it brought off of its like raid utility. Before then, it was like maybe kill Jaden, but I don't know, man. In raid, there's a lot of like locked in spots, so then Moonkin ends up fighting for what is effectively like five spots that are left for Shadow Priest, Elemental, Shaman, Warlock.
Yeah, Boomkin utility is certainly... I think they have a bit of like Vengeance DH syndrome. Actually, a lot of specs in this case, where their relative utility in Mythic Plus is certainly a lot higher than in Raid. You just once in a blue moon kind of need, like something that they have that nobody else does. And I totally agree with Gabe. Like, just Innervate is kind of... It's good, but it's not, you don't need it to succeed for the raid encounter for sure. So at the end of BFA, if we're to summarize, then we're leaving it with, they didn't really have an exceptional niche in terms of damage type. They didn't really have solid raid utility. I guess are these kind of, are we on the same page as their like weaknesses at the end of the expansion? Anything we want to add to that?
I think lack of scaling with secondary stats and just like being really lackluster whenever corruption was introduced was a problem because of how the Azurite system worked for us. Like, other classes had Azurite scaling that was in their favor, like things such as Flashpoint or I guess Flashpoint's a great example. It's like Warlocks scale with haste because of Flashpoint, so they stack Expedient to Kingdom Come. Moonkin's damage from their Azurite is Streaking Stars, which is a damage proc, so we don't scale as well with corruption. think that was also part of it, but that's, I guess, more tentative tuning stuff, not even like fundamental flawed issues.
But a lot of that, like what you just mentioned, is essentially BFA like specific systems that are disappearing really soon.
Exactly.
So then, indeed, that does segue us and lead us into. Actually, before we talk about SL, one thing that I did want to mention is there's obviously like a kind of, I wouldn't say Boomkin is like super meme to the level of, you know, like Feral and Windwalker and stuff like that as far as community is concerned, but they certainly have like some memes about them, like some negatives about them. Do you guys think, in your opinion, playing these at like just for so long and at high levels, that Boomkin is one of those specs that's a bit over memed and they're really not as bad as people think? Or do you think that the memes are just like totally warranted? Boomkin has performed not great. What do you guys think?
I think all of us have agreed, and I mean, it's just Boomkin is actually in a pretty good state compared to a lot of other classes. There's definitely worse out there for sure.
Okay, you guys are on the same page here, Gabe, Tettles.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. I don't think that it's I don't think that it's actually that far behind other stuff. I think more often than not, it just comes down to like the fact that there's only one spec for balance, so that like you can't swap freely like you're another pure DPS. So you're always going to be. I mean, balance more often than not is like 50th percentile to top 75th percentile of specs in the game for DPS. So more often than not, it's like not that bad. But if you don't have 3 specs, it's hard to pick something that's like well overtuned, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, when you compare it to like the existence that like feral druids and windwalkers have to suffer, I guess it's not that bad. But it's been a hot minute since we were like top tier at pretty much anything.
Tomb,
Little
what's
sad.
yours?
Were we top tier in Tomb? We were really good on the last boss, I'll give you that. But I don't know if we were top tier for the whole raid.
Oh, talking about Legion now, I miss it already. Thanks.
I don't know, probably then, but it's hard to really say. I don't think it's that far behind. I also think that it has like a pretty strong following of supporters who actually end up playing it, which garners a lot more developer time than other classes would end up getting because of that. Because like in BOD, for example, I think it had more representation than even it was like the most represented spec in Battle of Dazar'alor, even more than Havoc in Demon Hunter, which is.
I think Druid and Boomkin in general has like always been probably one of the most popular specs in the game, like for a very long time. Like in general, just a lot of people play it.
Why do you guys think that is, though? Do you think it has anything to do with? And again, if I'm wrong, definitely call me out on this. But like, where on the totem pole do they lie of introductory simplicity to play, right? Like, are they new ranged DPS friendly? Can people pick them up easily? Are they simpler than warlocks and mages and shadow priests and whatever, in your guys' opinions? Let's leave BM hunters out of this. Or are they more difficult to learn, right? Like, is some of that popularity because they have a lower barrier to entry?
I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a pretty easy class to get into, and it's like I would say it's like you can generally like understand how it all plays out really easily. Maybe it's like obviously you still got a big enough skill gap that, you know, it's difficult to master, but it's like pretty easy to pick up and play, at least this is my opinion.
I think that people who start to get into the game look at it and they're like, wait, that's a big chicken. That's really troll. I like that. And so they end up playing Moonkin because they see it's a big chicken, and then they just stick with it because, I don't know, it just has like a cult following right now. It's always had like a cult following of people who won't re-roll off of it, and it's probably because it's just the most troll-looking shit of all time.
Yeah, Moonkin's fucking sick, man.
That's what I'm saying too. Like, I think Moonkin looks amazing.
Okay, Tettles.
You gotta stop. You can't be doing that.
Right then. So I assume you'll be going with Night Fae if you had your choice, Tettles, right? You love furries, but
ideally.
Okay, so like Barry Tentra, I think maybe part of it too is Druid's the only class in the game that really does have all four roles, right? So people can, I know when people have asked me historically, like, hey, I'm new to the game, I don't know what to play. I'm like, oh, well, try Druid, right? Because you can try everything technically within one class. So that probably helps a bit too. So now then, indeed, moving into SL. There definitely were some changes for Boomkin. I remember at least the beginning of Alpha when I tried everything and people were asking and stuff. Since then, I've lost a bit of track as to everything. So why don't you guys start us off and let us know what really changed up in Legion Alpha up to the point to where we are now in beta, because there's been some good things and I guess some bad things. Just as I was looking at the talent tree here, people weren't very happy with like Solstice, for instance. But where do we stand, guys? What are the changes that came in for SL for the core? Like, we'll get to all the details of covenants and conduits and soulbinds later on, but the core of the spec.
Well, Starfall's a good button now. People have probably been waiting for that for about 2 years, maybe longer. They removed empowerments, added an Eclipse system that, what I'm told, is like pretty similar to how it was in Wrath, but I didn't play Moonkin back then. Which basically, you cast 2 Wraths and you enter a Lunar Eclipse, or you cast 2 Starfires and you enter a Solar Eclipse, and that just empowers your the filler of that respective Eclipse, Wrath or Starfire. Makes it a faster cast and hit harder. Starfall is return to WAD function. It's a buff on you that you can only have 1 active at a time, but a 40-yard AoE around you just gets blasted, which is nice. Miss that Starfall. It's probably my favorite iteration of Starfall.
Caveat: it does not hit mobs that are not in combat. Not in combat with you, but not in combat. They can be in combat with one another, like meleeing one another for some RP flavor, and then we'll get pulled by Starfall.
Yeah, but it's better than WAD Starfall in that regard.
Yeah.
Wait, it does pull mobs that are in combat with each other?
Yes.
Oh god.
Well, they've been fixing that on a case-by-case basis, though. Like,
still active in Plaguefall,
I know
though.
In some areas of Plaguefall. I've noticed that Starfall doesn't pull every pack anymore. It used to pull literally every pack, and it doesn't do that anymore in like the 3rd quarter, which is nice.
What about the guys in some of the cages before the second boss in Sanguine Depths that are fighting each other?
I think there's a line of sight issue there, so that they do not pull. Other than that, I mean, that about covers everything, right?
Celestial alignment got changed.
Yeah.
So now our cooldowns, instead of being a flat damage gain, you just get both Eclipse states, which buff your your arcane damage and your nature damage. Moonkin has both spell schools, just depending on what ability you're casting, and then like Star Surge and Starfall and a couple of other abilities are astral damage, which is both spell schools, and that actually double dips during your celestial alignment. So it's kind of a unique cooldown in that regard. I actually think it's more interesting. I don't know if you guys agree with that though.
Yeah.
More interesting, but it kind of is already cropping up with this issue where a lot of our damage is funneled into our cooldown because of the double dipping. And not so much outside of it.
On top of all that, one of the things I'm actually liking a lot is the added utility to basically a lot more of the like common spells like Ursul's Vortex, Stampeding Roar, Bash, all sorts of those kind of spells. You can now have like more of them, as opposed to like you could be like, you had to like pick Typhoon. Now Balance has Typhoon baseline, and they can now pick another one, so you don't have to make that choice. So you can have Ursul's Vortex and Typhoon, and then you have Stampeding Roar. It's actually a pretty big improvement in terms of the amount of things you could do. A lot of that utility is probably insanely good for Mythic Plus, and definitely a lot of use out in the world, and maybe even raid. I know it's like kind of a little weird to call it raid utility because it's like not too many cases right now that I see where it's that useful, but Stampeding Roar for sure is probably the big one, the biggest for sure of the added utility that's available.
Another thing that has been changed recently is shooting stars got moved from a talent to become baseline, and then the talent that was shooting stars is now solstice, which is what people were talking about and Sloot alluded to earlier as well. So shooting stars, basically whenever you dot a target, you have a chance to gain 2 astral power, but there's heavy diminishing returns on shooting stars even though it's still baseline. So
Yeah, we forgot to touch on that, I guess, when we were talking about Legion to BFA, but they made shooting stars awful from Legion to BFA by adding diminishing returns, like additional dotted mobs, which also added towards making our dots bad. And then going into this expansion, they cut the generation of shooting stars in half, and it still has that DR attached. And they made it baseline recently, and said that it would proc more, but that was just a lie. It doesn't proc more. And it only gives 2 AP when it procs, and it still has DR, and it's just really miserable, I'd say.
Yeah, it was a talent option, and it was such a useless talent that they made it baseline. That's basically all. It's still useless, but it's there at least.
So I'm just going down your guys' list here. So the empowerments rework, celestial alignment, shooting stars, 1 star fall at a time, etc. And of course the new utility. Not how do you guys feel about this? All these changes. Some more utility, good. You know, one of the things we identified that on the end of BFA was kind of right? Like we need some more utility. What about the kind of mastery and eclipse rework and starfall? Like, does it look like we're headed in so far a good direction in Shadowlands for Boomkin?
I think so. I believe as a whole, these are all substantially better changes than what we previously had with BFA. I think the Eclipse is significantly better than the empowerment system. And there's a lot more nuance to it. And then maybe the game just feels like more as a whole than what BFA was starting out in Shadowlands. But I think I like Shadowlands Moonkin significantly more than BFA Moonkin. How do you two feel?
I definitely think it's in a good direction, especially for the baseline class, because obviously if you just stripped, Azurite essences from BFA Moonkin, it's very bad, and there's a lot more baseline changes that are pretty good. There are a couple issues that I'm sure with Starfall being, obviously I think everyone looked at Starfall being very overpowered, being uncapped and doing a lot of damage, and it's received plenty of nerfs. I don't think it's like, I mean, it's still a good spell to hit. It's definitely worth hitting, but it is not, I would say, as super powerful in terms of most realistic situations, which would be like 5 targets. Like maybe there's that very rare pull where you're pulling, and I know probably in Mythic Plus you probably do big pulls a lot, and so Moonkin can still like do pretty good damage there. But there's other classes that have had their AoE that kind of competes even at that level.
I think if you take the class now and you buff its damage by like, I don't know, 30%, it'll probably be in a good spot.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're looking just from a design perspective, the class is a lot better from BFA. I mean, BFA is a steaming pile of shit. It's not hard to improve on that, and they have improved on it. But they've also like inexplicably nerfed our damage the last 4 beta patches in a row. A little confused about that one, because like we're not even close to like Warlock tier. We have some good burst in Incar, and that's about it. Also, we're gonna have a really like disturbing scaling issue in this expansion, like more so than we've had in the last like 3 expansions. I don't know anyone who. Sorry, what'd you say?
Like a negative scaling issue?
Yeah, negative.
Yes.
Not positive.
I was gonna say it doesn't sound very happy, so.
We are going into the first tier, and we already like don't want haste. Don't want crit. Like Venthyr is looking to be the best at the moment, as of like most recent patches. Venthyr gives you haste and crit when you press the Covenant ability. Even if that wasn't the case, like haste and crit are not very desirable to begin with. There's no like kit interaction at all. with crit, and Wrath's cast time is like baseline way too low, so haste quickly falls off for us too. Even though you would think we would want haste because we're a builder spender class, so like more haste, build
With
faster,
dots.
do more
With
damage
dots.
with dots. But it's just not the case, and it's gonna be so bad if they don't change something.
What
So bad.
what do you think they should change? Like, well, what would you change?
What I change?
Dude.
Oh boy.
I'm
could talk
not
about
talking
that
about like
forever.
full. Well, I mean, you can go as deep as you want with this, but more so like to the scaling issue, right? Hey, specifically, it seems is definitely on the hot seat. Like, what would you any band-aid fix you think they could do in the next 7
Band-Aid
weeks?
fix. Yeah, make Wrath GCD scale better with haste. Like we also have built into the Eclipse system faster cast times on Starfire and Wrath, like in their respective Eclipse. And like that coupled with the free haste we get from Venthyr, we hit GCD cap on Wrath almost instantly. So if they could make Eclipse like scale down our GCD accordingly, that could be a good band-aid fix. I don't know if that makes haste
Historically-
desirable, but it makes it less undesirable.
Yeah, historically they have let us go below GCD cap on Wrath. Like with the empowerment system in BFA they did, right?
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean part of it is like Gabe said, Venthyr is just capping us on both crit and haste like really quickly. In addition to that, we have a legendary that gives us a lot of crit at the very beginning of our Eclipse states, which I'm sure we're gonna hit on the legendary in a second. But like all of that combined, we're just capped on both haste and crit during any relevant portion of damage to where we just do not want the stats anymore.
Okay. What about the... I mean, okay, if your damage is crap, your damage is crap. You need 30, 40, 50% bump, whatever. Hopefully that comes.
Yeah.
But what about damage, like, types? Is there anything you excel in? From my experience so far, at least, just seeing various people play Boomkin in M+, whatever, any short burst cooldown boss, they just, like, destroy. I don't know. I assume just because you get, like, maxed out crit and all this crazy shit, whatever it may be when you pop your stuff. But what's up with that? I mean, they just do insane damage, and then they obviously fall off pretty quick after, but...
Bugged Conduit.
Ah,
The Venthyr Conduit gives... It's supposed to give 2% crit per stack of Ravenous Frenzy, and instead it gives 20 for all of beta. So,
Bugged legendary too.
Bug,
yeah.
bug.
Arcanic Pulsar is supposed to give Incarnation, and instead it for some reason it gives you Incarnation with 100% crit. so we're balance is kind of bugged right now, but even still, like all the bugs aside, it is still really strong burst damage, like you were stating, just due to Ravenous Frenzy or due to
is it just burst single target or AoE as well?
This thing is burst single target. The problem with AoE is obviously like our cooldown amps are AoE, but our AoE doesn't scale at all. Like with all the same problems with Starfall being you cast Starfall and that's all you can do. Starfall doesn't tick faster or do more damage with haste. You're already crit capped. Like it's just yeah, our AoE damage specifically doesn't scale at all, and so with I forgot what you were talking about actually, but
Sorry,
Where
man.
does it
It's
excel?
early.
where's
Yeah,
it?
to clearly answer the question of where it excels, the answer is exactly one target every 3 minutes that is alive for exactly 20 seconds, or 20 targets spread out that nobody can cleave.
So
You know, Halls of Atonement, whenever you have to fight Cigar after the third boss loot, that's where we excel.
okay, good stuff. I know what I'm bringing to that one portion of the dungeon. So what's your... So is it just like, I guess it sustains really bad, Gabe? Like you said, that just needs to be buffed? Like if you're just sitting there on a raid boss, single target raid boss, you're just going to fall off the map after 3-4 minutes? I guess not 3 because you get CA again, but like 2 minutes?
Okay, so let's say the expansion went live next week with current tuning. You're not gonna see a single druid in World First Progression. It's like a class that isn't complete dumpster, and you could bring if you're like more casual, but there's no way you see a single Boomkin in World First Progression. It's unplayable.
Which is funny because most of the top end guilds have like storied balance mains on their roster too, like that don't play a ton of like multi-classing or multi-specking. They're like purely balanced players, and they still get brought to almost every progression fight, and they're in on world first kills even when Moonkin is not great.
Well, you said, well, I guess we don't have to go into the other druids. So then, like you said, is this just a numbers issue, or do we need some mechanical stuff here as well? Some like actual baseline stuff, or could it just be fixed by numbers and you guys would be happy with the way they play, etc.?
Happy enough.
I definitely think it's like definitely a concerning numbers issue for sure, and then there's just a scaling issue.
The numbers are an immediate problem. There's a lot of not super fun problems that exist currently, though, is how I feel about it. But if you had to ship like the full class right now, it would be okay, but not fun, right?
But like, was not so like not as good as Legion then in terms of design, in terms of fun? Question mark. No,
not even close.
What's not fun about it though? Like what do you just genuinely not enjoy pushing? It's slow.
It's really slow on AoE. Like it's like okay on single target, but it's abnormally slow on AoE. So just as a point of reference, right now I think we're at about 5.5 astral power per second. Whenever you're spending, in Legion we were at 12. So it's literally less than half the spend power. Like while they have reduced the cost of Star Surge since then by 10 astral power per, it's like not even close on how many spenders you end up casting. So it feels abnormally slow. Our legendaries, and there's just a lot of anti-synergy, I guess would be the best way of describing some of the more nuanced issues with the spec as a whole. Is just there's a lot of anti-synergy just with some of like how the legendaries function, how the covenants work, just a lot of different problems.
Do you think some of that, like, slowness, like you're saying, is just because it's early expansion shit, gear, et cetera, or is it just, like, at this point in Legion as well, it was just faster paced, period?
So it's... I think it's, like, holistic problems. Like, so, just to give example, Arcanic Pulsar, it completely resets your empowerment damage once you enter into Incarn, once you pop your Arcanic Pulsar. So that just ruins any pre-existing Eclipse that you had built up. So basically, once you enter Eclipse, you're able to buff it up with Star Surge and make your fillers do more damage. Eclipse just Arcanic Pulsar just completely resets that. So that doesn't work that well. Balance of All Things, it doesn't work well with our cooldowns because Balance of All Things wants you to be entering Eclipses as quickly as possible, whereas right now our cooldowns keep you in Eclipses for a very long time. The Emerald Dreambinder, you really don't want to Star Surge late into your Eclipse as it currently stands, but with Dreambinder, you have to keep up a maintenance buff that is cast via Star Surge, but at the same time, you want to be pooling for the start of your next Eclipse. But with Dreambinder, that just doesn't work with how the kit works. There's a Kyrian Conduit, which completely desyncs Kindred Spirits from your cooldowns and is actually a damage loss to take. And then there's like Star-Lord and Cancel Auraing, because Star-Lord is a 20-second buff when the class revolves around 15-second playstyles and 15-second increments. So there's just like a lot of anti-synergy with the kit, where the class is like whole and fine, but like there's a lot of minutia that goes along with it that makes it just less desirable and less fun.
I don't think it's whole and fine. Moonfire and Sunfire are still useless.
Okay, you're right. Never mind. I'll take that back. Moonfire and Sunfire are actually just the worst possible thing that I don't know how they're...
I don't even know why we're not class.
I think a lot of the past issues were kind of solved by those, like, especially when, like, you say that the class plays slow, yet we're talking also about being haste capped, which is just, I mean, that's just like, it's weird, right, when you think about it. And it's like, well, our you could like fix that by like having our dots, you know, when they tick, do something. It's like if you had more haste, they ticked faster. But that's the problem is shooting stars is hard DR'd on an RPM that even haste doesn't fix that. And in AoE, with all that extra haste, nothing happens. Like all haste does in mass AoE is just make you cast faster for more astral power that you can't even spend on anything relevant because Starfall only does what Starfall does. It doesn't do anything more with more haste. So
what if you could overlap Starfalls?
that is one suggestion that
Bingo.
I would try to do.
You need to also understand though that even if you can overlap Starfalls, I've seen a lot of people talk about this. Like, oh man, it feels so bad that you can't have more than one Starfall. It's like you don't have enough astral power to cast more than one anyway. Like Tettles said, what are we doing? Like 5.5 astral power
Yes.
per whatever, like
Per
it's
second,
so
yeah.
per second. It costs 50 astral power to Starfall. Starfall lasts 10 seconds. If you never stop casting a generator spell, if you never dot anything, because keep in mind, dots, how much do they give? 2 astral power when you cast the 2 astral power when you cast the dot, man. If you never stop casting generators, never cast your dots, you can maintain exactly 1 Starfall. And like the only time that changes is once a minute when you press Fury of Elune and you get 40 AP over the duration, which is most of the time going to be used as a bridge so that you can spend those globals dotting things instead of spamming Wrath. The numbers just don't work. They don't work, man.
So the numbers issue isn't just directed towards like we're lacking damage. It's just legit. The spec is off balance, no pun intended, right? Like it's just everything is kind of, the generating, the spending is just not up to snuff.
Most notably on AoE, like most notably, most of these problems occur on AoE, which is why like even still it may have been like it may be fine in raid even still, like the same reason that BFA Moonkin was fine in raid, where it's like the problems don't exist until you start adding additional targets and you're like, this feels miserable to play.
Is ST okay, generally speaking, outside of just the low damage?
Yeah, I think single target is mostly just a numbers tuning, and I think it's pretty easily numbers tuned. I think maybe I have a small issue with the repetitive casting of generator spells like in a row, just because of how low astral power they generate. It's like you cast, 2 or 3 Star Surges, and then you're casting Wrath for like 12 seconds straight, just like 12 of them right off. It's a little boring, but I think that's it's not destructive or anything. It's like it's kind of whatever on that.
Right. Saying you mentioned that you stay in your eclipses so long. When was it that they changed that you don't, like, Star Surge doesn't extend your eclipse, rather eclipse is like a set time and it empowers during, right? They changed it kind of recently.
Yeah,
3 or 4 weeks
that was
ago.
a recent change.
Is that good?
I think it was to avoid a potential overscaling issue that would have been you could basically maintain that eclipse almost indefinitely or for a ridiculously long amount of time. That's basically what they kind of wanted to avoid, especially with things like Convoke and like that, and where you would chain cast like 6 or 7 Star Surges and then suddenly your eclipse lasts 40 seconds. And it was kind of, I think they just did that to avoid potential scaling issues down the road.
Okay.
I actually don't so much mind that change.
I thought that change was good, yeah.
Yeah,
It was a good change mechanically, and it makes it so that like Star Surge had interaction with the kit again during your cooldowns. Like previously, like the very first iteration, Celestial Alignment Eclipse would get extended by your Star Surges like a normal Eclipse. They changed that pretty quick because obviously that was not sustainable. That would have been so beyond broken. It would have been a good scaling issue rather than a bad one.
Can't have that.
So they changed it to not extend your cooldown, but then after that, Star Surge was just a damage button during your cooldown. Like, it's supposed to extend your Eclipse, but not during your cooldown, so it's just a damage button. A big damage button, but just a damage button. So the new change makes it have interaction with the kit, but for some reason they thought they needed to tune us down by like 15% when they made that change, when we were already not in like a really hot spot. So it's caused some issues, you could say,
to put it lightly, I suppose. So before we start to get into the more nitty gritty stuff like legendaries and all that, there's two topics that are always a hot spot, or at least have been a hot spot. One is the AoE cap issue that was introduced this expansion. I'm not sure where on the totem pole of kind of the AoE cap issue Boomkin really lies. I don't think you guys are capped with anything, right? If I'm not mistaken.
We're square root formula on a couple of abilities, notably talents, but Starfall's hard capped at 20. Sunfire is uncapped, and that's basically it. But like hard capping 20 Starfall, that's
never gonna happen.
Yeah, and then square root formula on AoE stuff, like
Fury.
Okay, dude. Yeah, Fury of Elune, Shooting Stars, Full Moon, it meteors square root formula.
Okay.
Those things are capped like that. But even then, dude, it's Starfall hard capped at 20. You're never gonna hit 20 targets anyways. So
unless you're like wiping on Kale, which is gonna happen a lot.
Okay, fair.
Just your final going out. Okay, so no problem really with AoE capping. GCD is the other one that I wanted to talk about. Now, nothing crazy in terms of, I would say, historical issues for GCD. Correct me if I'm wrong, for Boomkin. Like, you did have, Unholy Arcane style 7 GCDs to press, constantly, every 30 seconds, 2-3 GCDs to queue up. So it's been okay, but with the recent changes and finally some wins in the direction of GCD, a couple of your celestial alignment change, actually, I heard was kind of unfavorable getting taken off the GCD, right? Because of the 30 Astral Lost.
So
some of we got nerfed.
Yeah.
so recall how we spent a lot of time talking about how our AP generation is complete garbage,
Right.
and we could press one single GCD and get 30 of it, and now we don't have that. On top of that, the legendary that we're going to play with most of the time, the Pulsar legendary, which is like similar to the Azurite trait from BFA, but it works off of AP spent, so it also works on Starfall now. So overall, just greatly improved from BFA's version. Whenever we proc Incarn from that, we would get a small portion of AP, not 30. I think it was like Tettles probably knows, like 12 AP whenever it would proc, or 8 or something like that.
Yeah, it was something
So
very small.
not only is like our cooldown feel worse to press, we have to spend so many globals to generate that lost AP, but it nerfs the legendary as well, which is like just really sad.
I mean, in all honesty, I don't think it really matters too much. I think it's fine to. I felt like it was fine to be on the GCD. It was fine to be off. I just found it really funny that somehow we got every class is like rejoicing over their GCD changes, and then Moonkin's like, "Wait, how the fuck do we get nerfed?"
One of my biggest concerns about that, and it's like I don't really know when I assume it's like maybe just something they did on the fly, kind of quick tuning. I don't know if actual tuning is like, I assume that's still a thing to do, but hopefully that wasn't them nerfing thinking that Moonkin actually needed the nerf. It was more like we just kind of want to tune it to be a little better, or tune it just around certain things at the very moment, and not actually thinking about overall tuning. And hopefully that's just,
I think their mentality, their approach to like starting to remove things off GCD was, over time, because they created this GCD issue that then tried to add a lot of buttons to feel good when pressing. So like the 30 AP on, or Astral Power on Celestial was that. So now they're like, well, it's not on GCD. So without looking at anything else, we're taking the 30 Astral away because that was the benefit of it being on the GCD. But I feel like they kind of pulled the trigger a bit too early on things like that. And even Innervate, right? Innervate used to be, 12 seconds? Now it's 10. So you're technically still losing net uptime on Innervate, especially when you cast it on someone else, just because it's not on the GCD anymore.
Yeah, but we take those. That's a good one.
That's a dub for us.
Heck, Innervate being on the GCD.
No, I'm not saying it should go back on the GCD. I'm just saying if they were to do apples to apples in terms of this has been removed from GCD, it should be like 11 seconds or 10.5 seconds or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, more or less for Moonkin, it was just weird because it felt fine. It felt fine being on the GCD because it's 20 seconds for Celestial or 30 seconds for Incarn, so it didn't really feel that bad, it being on the GCD, whereas other specs, 8-second buff that's on GCD is kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah. What I also don't understand, if someone could please explain to me the logic, is like Incarn is a powerful cooldown, physically transforms your character. So that is like a button that you would think makes sense to be on the GCD based on their whole like, oh, your powerful abilities like that are very impactful should be on the GCD sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. They take it off the GCD in the same patch. Shaman Ascendance stays on the GCD, and they give it a powerful on-use effect for every spec. And Ascendance is pretty similar. Like, it's a 3-minute CD that, like, greatly empowers you during the duration. Why?
I don't know, man. Their logic behind
Just
GCD
why?
stuff is really wild. There's no explanation, I don't think, Gabe. I think we just take it off the GCD and you just accept it for what it is.
I mean, it's just the coin flips heads or tails, man. That's just
random ability got caught in the crosshairs of GCD changes, and I guess somehow got changed. Whatever.
It's like I don't know. I think they're still trying to obviously work through it. We saw I think 2 more things off GCD this patch, right? Innervate was one of them, and Manatee. That's right. Yeah, Manatee from Mistweaver. So we'll see. Maybe hopefully they can kind of homogenize their decisions a bit more.
Any frenzy regens coming out the GCD anytime soon?
Dude, don't start with me, man.
Can they also make it go back to your most recent damage taken as opposed to 25% flat?
Listen, you got your own battle to fight their Tettles with.
That's my Guardian affinity. I need that battle too. Hold on, I'll go to war with you, bro. I got you.
I'm not sure how much you're going to need to change the bear form when you're on the bench anyway, right? So it doesn't really matter. But okay, so we've seen all of these baseline changes. It looks like most of them were okay. But by the way, that bench thing was to Tettles only, chat. I just want everyone to be on the same boat here. Sang and Gabe were not caught in that crossfire. So it looks like they kind of like fixed some of the BFA things, but now have created weird synergetic issues like between other smaller things like Star-Lord, etc. that you guys mentioned. Bouncing heads, I assume. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree.
Are these, and okay, let's put memes aside for a sec, right? Like lol 7 weeks before expand. Like, are these things that you guys? I know it depends if you're pessimistic or optimistic, etc. But are these things that are realistically fixable before launch, or is the spec just has so many like fires that it needs to be put out at the moment?
Depends if they want to fix it.
I think it is fixable. It doesn't require like complete redesign. It requires changes to like maybe philosophy of how they actually view a couple things, but I do believe it's changeable and fixable to where it would end up being more fun.
I think one of my biggest concerns is that I feel like there's a couple outlying problems that I feel like have had no experimentation with them, and I almost feel like the experimentation phase of a beta is like kind of near its end. Like you're not going to see drastic changes in some things, and so I think like maybe testing a couple possible solutions or something is like kind of at that point is now like out of the question, and it's more just going to have to be a numbers tuning.
Right.
So it's a little worrisome that.
I don't know when they consider things out of the question for like big changes, because I thought it was out of the question that any big changes were going to happen to anything in the last month, yet Shadow Priest got a complete redesign, like from the ground up redesign. So balance doesn't need that for sure.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't need big changes,
think,
but it's a good time to, I think, there's a time to experiment with some things, like maybe introduce something, get an opinion, and then either take it out or keep it in or revert it, whatever, after that. But I feel like you won't see that.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. If you guys thought that they needed like a Shadow Priest style rework or revamp or anything, but if it's not to that level, then it should theoretically be within the realm of fixability.
Yeah, definitely not the whole class. I think the whole class as a whole is like pretty close to where it needs to be. I just think that, again, like my biggest gripe with the class is Moonfire and Sunfire are just useless spells, and I do not understand why they exist in their current state.
What would you like to be done with them? Saying, what do you think?
I mean, outside of just actual damage, like shooting stars as a DR, it feels absolutely awful to cast the spells in AoE because they only serve as a slightly more damage effective global, and they don't generate you astral power. We were talking about astral power generation being so low. I think a lot of the core problems can be solved by buffing the astral power generation from them by removing like a shooting star's diminishing return, and maybe giving them more relevant damage so that they're, or like I said, like in the past, you know, second target, third target pops up, you feel like your class should activate, and that does not happen. It's literally second target, oh, that's another target for Moonfire and Sunfire to also tick on at the same time. Doesn't do anything else, but that's all. But that's what it is right now.
Yeah, so as a point of reference, Shooting Stars generates approximately 4% of our total astral power, and that got moved from a talent to just being default baseline. And I don't know, man. It should give the spec some interactivity, and like it should make the dots actually do something to where they feel better to press, but they just currently do not. And part of the reason that I think we all share like such good feelings about how Legion Moonkin ended up feeling is because of how Shooting Stars worked in Legion, where it was 4 astral power, no DR, and then you had pulls like, if you guys remember, the lower Karazhan Opera pull, or like the EOA Crab pull, and you would just push Sunfire on it. You would literally fill your astral power bar after like 3 seconds. It would just fill all the way up, and you would just launch a bunch of Starfalls. And that was one of the absolute best feelings.
Gabe, what do you think? Outside of who let Tettles in?
I think there's... Okay, I'll try to keep it concise here. I think there's
all good.
At least 2 changes they could make outside of just damage tuning. They would make the spec go from feeling like weird and clunky to pretty good. Bump the AP gen of Wrath and Starfire back up to their BFA value. So right now it's 6 for Wrath, 8 for Starfire. Those should be 8 and 12, respectively. I see a lot of people complaining, like 1 in your chat, but 2 just like people I talk to on a daily basis about how like boring or like weird it is that you spam a million Wraths or Starfires, and on top of that, like, the damage share of that comparative to Star Surge or Starfall is really bad. So just buff their generation, and then it's, like, fine if they're weak, because you'll be able to cast more spenders. That's 1. 2, we have all these crit, like, buffs in our kit through, well, not in our kit, in our borrowed power, through Ravenous Frenzy and through the crit legendary, but this spec has no interaction with crit whatsoever. It's like, who are they designing these effects for? So maybe add some sort of interaction. Shooting Stars is baseline now. It gives 2 AP when it procs. How about when it crits, it gives 4? Or something like that. Just something small. Anything, really.
One morsel, please, bro.
For some crit interaction. And that would also help give us more AP. Help with the AP problem. I think that's probably the best thing they could do.
So
other than buffing damage, of course, which is, as we discussed, not good.
So it sounds like things are just kind of slow and wet noodly. Like you spend so much time for that big oomph, and then you never really get a big oomph.
That's right.
Part of the problem, too, is that you're still star surging on AoE, which is like, God, such a meme, man. Because you can only have 1 starfall down at a time, and like you'll enter into your Eclipse, you'll drop your starfall, you'll end up star surging to empower your Eclipse, and then you'll end up spamming your filler, which will either be Lunar Strike or Wrath, or Starfire or Wrath, sorry. And then like it's empowered to do slightly more damage. But that starts to become like dangerous territory whenever Star Surge again is starting to empower your AoE in some form or fashion. I feel like that starts to go down a pretty weird rabbit hole, especially if you buff all of the astral power generation of the kit, but don't end up changing fundamentally how you're going to be able to spend it on AoE. Like you need like a core change of how Starfall is going to work, because at that point, then we're going to end up just like Star Surging more on AoE. We're not going to end up being able to spend it on what we want to.
Yeah, I'd personally like to go one problem at a time in that regard. Like, Starfall being stackable is meaningless if we don't have more AP gen.
Okay.
I'd like to see the AP gen problem fixed first, and then... Oh, I'd like to see both of them fixed, but I mean, one step at a time. So, more AP gen, and then maybe stackable Starfall would be fantastic.
Sang, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I said it's like buff Moonfire and Sunfire, make them generate more astral power generation, bump that up, and then that extra astral power be able to actually stack Starfall.
Okay.
Pretty nice line there.
Yeah, we got to get the board out and just like connect the ropes together.
What are you like trying to detect a homicide there, Tettles?
Exactly.
Detective Tettles on the case?
There's been a murder of Moonkins everywhere. Salute.
Yo, getting lined behind vengeance after yesterday.
True. Vengeance is dead. Crab.
Okay, let's. I mean, we got to do it as much as you don't want to. Let's dive into talents here. Your one note on talents is our talents are unimpactful. Keck W. But let's get a bit more insight on that. We'll just basically do like a row by row kind of thing, and we can chat about it. We don't have to go like, if there's nothing to really say for the row or the talent, then there's just nothing to say. But let's dive in a bit here and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on what's crap, what needs buffs, what is like really good, if anything, etc. So 15 row. I want to set that up.
All right, so 15 row. It's basically nature's balance, or if you feel like being weird and having things tank for you, force of nature. That's it. Nothing else to that.
Okay.
Basically, the niche in this row is like astral power generation. That's what all three of these fill. They give some amount of AP per. Nature's balance is purely passive. And Warrior Valoon, while you end up empowering your Starfires to get like 3 instant cast Starfires, it is just, I don't know, it's always been significantly inferior to Nature's Balance. So I don't know. Basically, you're just picking between Nature's Balance and Warrior Valoon, which one is tuned better, and then the niche of Force of Nature. I actually like Force of Nature being on this row because it is worse damage. So you actually feel like you're actively giving up something. So that one makes sense on the rest of the row, but then it's just like Warrior Valoon versus Nature's Balance. Which one is tuned better?
Well, I mean, Force is nice, speaking from the tanking world, right? Force is nice just because, Necrotic Week, things like that, or here comes a big hit. So, like, it helps the tank out a bit. But does Warrior Valoon provide any mechanical advantage like that, or is it just undertuned, has been undertuned?
Warrior Valoon provides nothing.
Huh. Okay.
Hold on.
That talent has been in the game for 3-4 expansions, and I don't think I've taken it once outside of talenting it to say, "Yep, it still does nothing," and then not touching it again.
Hold on. It gives you slightly more mobility.
Why is that?
Because you
doesn't need
get
mobility.
3 instant cast Starfires every 45 seconds.
So, okay, so I guess the design goal with it is what Tettles is saying. Is that like the point that you can kind of shoot on the go once every 45 seconds, but in practice it's just dumpster?
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to plan to need to move every 45 seconds, you would just pool Astral Power or plan your dot refreshes around it, since those are instant cast, right?
Dots.
So it just, like, you might think without playing the spec that it fills that niche, but it actually fills nothing. It's so useless.
Doesn't it give like slightly more astral power whenever you cast Starfire?
40% more, I think.
Yeah,
It's still so bad because it's just like the opportunity cost. Nature's Balance is purely passive, whereas you have to cast like the Starfire and you still like incur the GCD of the Starfire. So like the opportunity cost is not like that great.
Also got to keep in mind that they once again nerfed the astral power generation of Starfire going into Shadowlands, so it's just even worse.
So yeah, that's right. I mean, that's percentages, right? 40% of garbage is just slightly less
Garbage, yeah.
Right. I know we're obviously very PvE focused here, but like maybe PvP like benefit on Warrior. I don't know if you guys know, like Tettles.
They're Nature's Balance gamers.
Yeah, Nature's Balance.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All your lunar strikes in PvP are instant anyway.
Yeah, you're always getting meleeed, so you get Alkin Frenzy procs, which are free.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
25 row, shared row, nonetheless, but 25 row. Anything
Good row.
notable here? Yeah. Renewal, I think, is back new / back to Shadowlands. No, if I remember correct.
No, it's
been there.
It's been there, yeah.
Maybe it's just Guardian. It's new for then. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that row has been pretty well balanced for a long time. Tiger's Dash is a little weird, but like that's fine. It's just a different mobility option compared to Wild Charge that you're not going to take very often. But like having that choice is okay. Wild Charge is just an insanely good ability. I love that thing.
Off GCD 15-second disengage for Balance Druid, so it's like...
Remember when it was on the GCD in Old Year?
That was cursed. Dude, what? I don't know who thought to put that on the GCD, but that was not good either.
Same guy that probably thought to put all of the things on the GCD.
But yeah, no, so that row, basically you're just picking between Renewal and Wild Charge. If you default choices, normally Wild Charge, but the row is good, yeah.
All right. Affinities. 30 row.
So going into Shadowlands, they built in some more stuff into the affinities. They put Ursul's Vortex into Resto, In-Cap Roar into Guardian, Maim into Feral, which is like Feral Kidney. A little weird. I would think like Stampeding Roar would make a lot more sense to be there if you look at In-Cap Roar and Ursul's, but that's Maim, so that's cool, I guess. Maybe that's a PvP thing.
I like.
And then Balance Affinity has Typhoon.
Yeah.
It gives us a lot more utility, being able to like change between the affinities now compared to before. I'm overall not like. It's okay.
I really like the talent row in general. I think it's been a pretty good one. It's kind of like it's a pick what you kind of want, and there's a solid benefit to all of them. Like, I mean,
Maim?
No, I meant just like the obviously I'm not talking about Maim. I think obviously Maim is like a pretty weird.
Maim is a meme.
Okay, you have to generate 5 combo points, and then you have to press Maim, and then it's a 3-second stun. So if you're in Feral, generating your combo points, and you then Maim the target, like...
I think in general the affinities have always been like a solid row, even without the added abilities, and the added abilities are a nice bonus. I do think that maybe it might lock in your choices more with, obviously, if you're relying on Ursul's Vortex, well, now you have to be Resto Affinity, whereas before it was like just for the like little less utility. Like anyone that needs Typhoon will have to be Balance Affinity, and it's kind of like a trade-off like that. So there's maybe that against it, but overall it's a pretty... I like it as a row.
I think as a universal row, it's really strong. It also gives us access to the nice combo of Typhoon and Ursul's Vortex for Mythic Plus, which is sick.
But also, some of the passives are also, I mean, if there's nothing else to benefit, like just having a bit of extra healing or healing support or 6% DR is, you know.
Yeah, that row is good. I think that row is for a shared row between all the specs. It's pretty well designed.
The single best talent row that they introduced with Legion. Really good. Really good.
35, which I believe is another shared row, if I'm not mistaken. Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, Heart of the Wild. So 2 like supporty utility. I guess technically they're all supporty utility, but I thought saying you just had like a heart attack talking about Heart of the Wild there. I was like, oh my god.
So basically, this row has changed going into Shadowlands, being that you had Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, and then Typhoon. But Typhoon was moved into Balance Affinity in the row above it, or baseline as Balance, and instead now it's just Heart of the Wild. Is Heart of the Wild coming back? I think it was last in MOP, or may have been in
Warlords. It was on the Nature's Vigil row.
Yeah, it was a really it's definitely a lot less powerful than that version, the old version of Heart of the Wild, because I think
still a 5-minute CD though.
Yeah, I think it was like almost like 100% amp on off spec rolls during it. At least some of the damage scaling was, and now I think it's like only 30%. So it's a very weird button, because it's, again, the cooldown on it just makes it like, I don't know, maybe there's that one time you want to be 30% more effective in a fight on an off spec roll. It's like it's there, but it's like very
kind of out of place. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
It's weird that that's the talent that they chose to pick to replace it. Like the row before, it was Mighty Bash, Mass Entangle, Typhoon, which honestly that row makes sense. It's all like kind of niche utility. But now Heart of the Wild is like feels a little bit different than the rest.
Also, Heart of the Wild is restricted based on your chosen affinity, whereas like the older version was all of your off spec-ishness. So at the same time, so now it's like kind of restricted to whatever your affinity is picked.
It's a very watered down, sad version of Heart of the Wild. Anyone who played back in MOP probably remembers Heart of the Wild Trank being the best healer cooldown in the game as a
Imagine if we got that
Moonkin.
back.
Yeah, I mean it was like objectively overpowered, but this Heart of the Wild is just sad. You log on and you get excited. You're like, oh, Heart of the Wild, I remember that button was so sick. And then you read it, it's like 30% increased healing from Resto Affinity. 5-minute
I'm
cooldown.
never pressing that button.
Fuck
like,
yeah!
At this point, we're just defaulted into Mighty Bash now, or Math Entangled.
Well, and here's my problem with the row is like you look at the other things too. In raid, extremely like Mighty Bash, extremely situational. Most things are stun immune anyways. If you think about raid encounters, or there's just better stuns to use because this Mighty Bash is only 4 seconds, whereas there's 5 seconds single target stuns and even longer for like 6-second ones. And the Mass Entanglement is also just very situational in a raid encounter. And so basically you're in raid, you're just defaulted to the Heart of the Wild, and honestly you never press it. You just maybe you'll press it and off you'll one once. It just exists.
If you can get good benefit out of it, like especially so say a healer dies in Mythic Plus or whatever, and you can actually kind of salvage a pull with it somehow, then I could see it actually being situationally very strong. But again, I don't know how that's going to be your default choice over.
I'd rather just have the single target stun.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna take Bash in dungeons anyways. Like I don't see myself using Heart of the Wild.
I was gonna say, like, in raid you're basically pigeonholed into Heart of the Wild unless there's that weird low situational use like Sang is saying. And for M plus, I mean, if you're in that scenario, Tettles, you're probably just gonna be running Mass or Mighty Bash anyways, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It seems weird. It seems like something they should just sort of overstep my analysis here, but it seems like maybe something that just add baseline and put something else there for you guys, because it just makes no sense at all to me, at least, just listening to you guys talk about it.
Agreed. I think we'd all agree that it would make more sense being baseline, because you're always going to have an affinity talented, right? So it's always going to at least buff up an affinity somehow, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention before we go on to the next row. Going back to affinities, can we talk about how they made Swiftmen fucking trash?
Yes.
Oh my god, dude.
Like, dude, why does it take me 3 globals to Swiftmend myself? Like, or sorry, it takes 2 to Swiftmend and then 1 more to go back into Moonkin form.
So,
like, why?
So for those who don't know, Swiftman now consumes hots to be able to even use it. So you have to like pre-hot yourself, whether or not be like regrowth, rejuve, something else like that. So the situation that you end up using it is you end up regrowthing yourself, and then you'll Swiftman to be able to heal yourself. But at this point, and then you have to like GCD shift back into Moonkin form. So you're better off probably casting just 3 regrowths consecutively into yourself, right?
Yeah. Explain to me how I save someone else or myself when it takes 2 globals for that heal to go up. It's not even like the payoff is great, Like maybe in the first tier you'll notice the Swiftmend, but like borrowed power systems tend to really inflate our HP as the expansion goes on, and it quickly becomes useless. I mean, it became really useless towards the end of BFA, even in the middle of BFA. And I imagine it's going to be the same thing going into this expansion, but now it takes 2 globals to use. It's like, why? Why ever take it?
I will say in most DPS optimizing situations, like it's definitely really weird, but I think it is bad, and it's probably just strictly worse. I don't know if the Swiftman does slightly more healing, but again, probably as Scape said early on, right now it's actually a pretty big heal to just rejuve and then Swiftman them. It's like almost half their health right now, but yeah, as player HP goes up more than the scaling does.
Spell power.
It'll probably be worse. But right now, it is actually like a really good spell to hit, just soloing content, whatnot.
Yeah, and you want to talk about it from like an overall like Druid design perspective. Look at what Resto Druid gets for their affinities. Balance affinities specifically, their Boomkin form is stronger than ours. Their balance spells hit harder than ours. So why do I have to get the shitty gimped version of Swiftmend? Why can't I just get the old one that doesn't use a hot?
They have cast time on Star Surge.
Yeah, but it hits twice as hard, man.
All right, well, I guess.
So why
I can't
don't you
argue.
just play DPS ranged Druid as a Resto Druid, and then you have the healing benefit too?
Hey, that's my Torghast build. That's actually really fun. You go Guardian, and then you just have less health on all the mobs. Or you could probably go Resto too, and then you just get all the anima powers that make you get Heart of the Wild permanently, and you're just in Moonkin form running around as a Resto Druid. It's pretty fun.
Sounds about right.
I'm remiss to not ask because I have Druid players here, and I'm usually curious to hear various Druid players' thoughts on how do you feel about like shape-shifting just as a design with the GCD and incurring, and like, are you guys fine with it? Is it frustrating to you? Probably more of like a PvP topic often. I think that's why it was added to the GCD back in the day, because it didn't used to be once upon a time. But like, is it like how do we feel about, you know, things like affinities and whatever promoting cross role play, but then shape-shifting? Non-issue.
The day they removed power shifting as an option because they put all that on the GCD was a very sad day. Definitely used to it by now, but like, it doesn't feel good.
I'm kind of
Look at that.
fine with the global on all shape-shifting, I think, especially since before, I mean, if you wanted to like do Aspect stuff and you used Heart of the Wild, I mean, it's fixed now, but you know, Heart of the Wild is a global and shapeshifting is a global, so it'd be 2 globals just to start doing Heart of the Wild stuff if you really wanted to. But I mean, I think the one global on shifting is it's fine. It's balanced. It's whatever.
I mean, part of it too is that you can shift out of form for 0 cost as well. Shifting, like dropping form, is just a debuff wipe basically, so it doesn't encourage ECD. So if you want to like quick break a root, you can shift into human form, which will drop the root, and then you just immediately shift back into balance form, which is like only 1 GCD even. But I don't know. Yeah, like the other two, it's just the game that we play. I don't think that I've noticed it since the change of removal of power shifting.
Fair. All right, let's get back on track here then. We were at the 40 row. So Soul, Star-Lord, Incarn. Okay.
Man.
What a happy bunch.
we're so fucking thrilled.
I don't want to talk about it, man.
What have they done to this row? It's like sad. It feels so hilariously unimpactful what you take in this row. And it pretty much always has been. There's always a best choice, like mathematically, and you just take that and you don't really think about it. And it doesn't change on like a situation by situation basis. Like, they're not unique enough. They tried to do something more unique with Soul of the Forest this expansion so far, but it's undertuned, let's say. Completely unusable would be another way to put it. I don't know what they'd have to do to the numbers on that to make it attractive, but it's just bad. And Star-Lord and Incarn, like I said, are just the same thing. You just use whichever one's tuned better.
I hate Star-Lord. I'm sick of it. Specifically, I hate Cancelora Star-Lord.
Yeah, Cancelora is weird. I mean, I don't mind doing it, but
I hate it.
I mean, we have like 10 more
It's cringe.
binds going into this expansion, and now I'm also finding out that like Star-Lord's gonna be good, so I'm still gonna have to have a Cancelora bind. It's like, man, end me.
Can you educate Boomkin noobs like myself? What's the cancel aura for?
So Star-Lord is a 20-second buff that stacks 3 times, but it doesn't refresh the duration when you're stacking it. So you get haste whenever you press Star Surge or Starfall, stacking 3 times. The thing is, our eclipses last 15 seconds, and Star-Lord lasts 20 seconds. And you want to front load Star Surges at the beginning of an eclipse. 1, because of the crit legendary that front loads our crit at the start of an eclipse. 2, because you want to build up your empowerment buff right away on your eclipse to make your filler spell more powerful. So you see how it's not lining up here?
Yeah, no,
like,
I
you're
gotcha.
going to go into
Okay.
a new eclipse and you're going to cancel aura immediately before you Star Surge. Every
Because you're going to be
single time.
like because you'd be like 2 or 3 seconds left on the duration before you would pop the triple surge. And you're
Right,
just like,
right.
yeah, it's like a 1.5% damage gain, I think is the number I heard. So not inconsequential.
Okay.
Yep.
That's yeah.
Yep.
Okay, it's there. What about Incarn? Just nothing exciting.
Incarn is basically just more dam on your cooldown. That's essentially what it is. Kind of makes you more focused around your 3 minute. It's just basically that's all it is. Like that's how the two talents really work against each other.
Maybe I'm weird,
Incarn-
but I like it. I like it because it gives me
I-
fucking armor, man.
Yeah, okay. I love Incarn.
Gives you an
because
extra
the
toe
armor
too. Did you know that?
What'd you say?
Moonkins have 3 toes, but Incarn Moonkin has 4. Fun fact.
I'm literally
Incarn's the best. I'm happy.
I'm literally checking this right now. Hang on.
Wait a second.
He's not wrong. What an abomination. All right. Well, you got something going for you. You guys got buffed in the
Holy
toe
shit.
department.
That's a good one. How did you know that?
I just noticed one day, man. I was just like randomly zoomed in. You know those weird camera angles you get indoors? It was probably like Toll de Gore or something. I pressed Incarn and I'm like, did I just get a toe?
I caught the toe.
Oh, that's how exciting Boomkin is to play, huh? You're staring at your toe
Oh
numbers.
yeah.
Okay, so nothing too exciting here. Any? I mean, that's why we're here, though. So I'll just ask it. What do we do about this row then? Right? Like, are these workable talents that you could see enjoyable and powerful and no cancel aura and all that kind of stuff, or do we just need like out with the old, in with the new here?
Yeah. So they could start by making them more than like a what? Tettles probably knows the numbers again. It's like a 4% DPS gain or something to take the talent, maybe less, versus having no talent. Like, just pump some power into these abilities.
So, as a point of reference, balance only has 4 talent rows that actually affect our damage, where most classes, more often than not, have 5.
Mhm.
In addition to that, our talents are just awful on top of it. So,
Like, okay, imagine a world where 3-minute cooldowns aren't cringe. They are, by the way. All the good classes for progression have like 1.5, 2-minute cooldowns. 3-minute cooldowns, fucking awful. Okay, but let's imagine a world where they're not. Imagine Incarn being like 3 times as powerful as it is now. Obviously, you need to make Star-Lord 3 times as powerful to compensate. But imagine a world where you could talent into this stronger burst cooldown because you need stronger bursts versus sustained damage. Like those are the niches that those 2 talents are supposed to fill, but they're so pathetic that you just take whichever one is tuned better for overall. Make them powerful, man.
What about the changes to Soul that you were saying? What do they change? You haven't been mentioning it. Is it just because it's dead in the water kind of
Previously,
thing?
Soul used to reduce the cost of your Starfall by 10, right, guys? I think
yes.
that's what it did.
That
and increased empowerment damage by 25%.
Yeah, now it... Here, let's read it. Increase Rat's astral power generation by 25%, and Starfire's critical strike by 15% during Eclipse. That's nothing.
25% of 0 is nothing, and we were already talking about the crit cap problem. So, it's
Yeah.
weird.
That it just needs a redesign. They redesigned it for this expansion. The redesign's not good. It needs another one.
I mean, 10.0 is around the corner. Don't worry about it.
True.
Catch one eventually. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that there's like a lot that they can do with this talent row specifically. I mean, maybe just buff them all up to make the row important, because this is our 60. Well, actually, I don't even know what that row number is anymore. That row is like the most important row for balance druids. Like more often than not, like your tier 100 row is the most important, but that one is ours historically, and it's just bad now.
Okay. So at least, I mean, not the best solution, but it does sound like at least you can slap some numerical band-aid fixes on it, and it would be...
It'd be okay.
It'd be okay. Maybe better news? 45 row?
Actually, worse somehow.
All right. The more
Twin
powerful
Moons.
talents we get into, the worse it gets.
Twin Moons and Stellar Drift compete for the exact same niche and are fundamental to how balanced does AoE. And then Stellar Flare is just there for single target. Like that's basically it. Twin Moons cuts down on the application time of Moonfire. Basically, it applies 2 Moonfires at a time and then gives your Moonfire slightly more damage. Our Moonfire is
Moonfire.
our Moonfire damage is abysmally low, straight up. So that talent can't be taken to the point where you don't actually even Moonfire an AoE more often than not.
Really?
Stellar Drift, Starfall is powerful now, so Stellar Drift is taken. Basically, it. They choke one another out because they are filling the exact same niche, and they're
basically this talent row has not changed going to Shadowlands. It's the exact same, except in BFA, Starfall was useless, so you took Twin Moons for anything that wasn't pure single, because you take Stellar Flare and single, and now they've made Starfall good, so you just take the Starfall talent since Twin Moons was useless kind of anyways.
And Stellar's just for pure single target.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's actually fine to be on that row, right? Because it gives you just like a single target option.
Okay. I guess Stellar also has maybe the mechanical benefit of casting while moving. You guys didn't mention it. Is that because?
Oh no, that's not instant cast. That's a cast time on that ability, Sloot.
On what?
Stellar Flare.
I didn't say instant cast. I said as a single target.
Oh wait, are you talking Stellar Drift or Stellar Flare? You said Stellar. Sorry,
I'm talking about Stellar. I was asking if Stellar Flare is just like the single target option.
Yes.
But then what I was asking is for Stellar Drift, you guys didn't really mention the mechanical benefit of casting while moving within it. Like, is that just not a big deal? Is that why you guys didn't talk about it?
Oh, it's an insane deal.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal enough that sometimes I just feel like taking that on single target.
I'd actually say it's part of the reason why it's so like huge. If they took away the cast while moving thing, I'd be really sad. It actually has a good benefit. So like imagine a single target, mostly single target raid boss, but like periodically spawning ads. Stellar Drift is now an option to use if you need to do a long movement. Like you just slap down the Starfall even though there's no ads out. Like it has benefit in other points of the fight because ads exist, but you can also just slam a Starfall and castle moving for 10 seconds.
I think N'Zoth lasers, right? Like N'Zoth lasers, I think would be a great example of that, where you're just able to slam it straight through. And while N'Zoth is single target, you're going to get some benefit out of the additional cast that you're gaining.
Yeah, I'd say most of the time, like you're still better off planning your movement, obviously. But if there's like unexpected movement, like a random mechanic that you just happen to get, you now need to like place a void zone at the back of the room or something, Now you have this movement option on the fly. It's really great. But all the other problems, like numerically, still exist with the row that make it very sad.
I mean, that's the thing about it. Is like, I'd rather take Stellar Drift for movement because the damage loss versus the other talents is like so tiny compared to like just being able to cast while moving is like almost more worth.
But since Stellar increases your duration on Starfall by 2 seconds, does it help budget a bit more Astral for something else since you can't double up on them anyways? Like, does that
Star Surge, which buffs up your Eclipse on AoE? Yeah, you're able to cast more Star Surges, which gives you slightly more damage gained on AoE, but it's not a ton. But that most of the power of that row on AoE just comes from the flat gain from Starfall damage.
Right. Okay. So is this just another numbers row saying?
Yes, and that's the problem is that row cannibalizes one another. The Twin Moons and Stellar Drift specifically cannibalize one another based purely on numbers.
But I mean, but they're like from a talent row design kind of thing, right? And a lot of other specs, you see a lot of specs that have like the AoE row or like the cleave row or the single target row. So it's gonna happen. So then, what would you do for Twin Moons if it was still meant to be a cleave AoE option? That wouldn't cannibalize Stellar, right? Like if it's AoE versus AoE, something's always going to kill the other.
The issue is that like those two talents are fundamental to our AoE.
Okay.
Or we feel like they're fundamental to our AoE. Whether or not they are, I guess, is not up to us, right? But we've played with both for such a significantly long time. Lady and the Child was Twin Moons. It was a Legion legendary, and we had both at one point where we had Stellar Drift as a talent and Lady and the Child as the legendary equivalent. So we played with both. They added Twin Moons back as a talent. Like I don't know. It feels for balance like it is a core of how the class is on AoE. But so having to pick there causes a lot of strife, I will say.
But you don't really need a pick because Moonfire is so low, right? Saying
Yeah,
easy
I mean,
choice.
it could be a really good talent, but it just buffs something that doesn't do much.
All right. Final row. I'm almost scared to ask at this point, but Solstice, which was the new addition to replace, which was it? Streaking?
Shooting Stars.
Streaking Stars.
Shooting Stars. Yeah.
Fury Full Moon and New Moon. What are we looking at here?
Yuck.
Okay, then. I'll see you guys next week.
It's a row of diminishing returns of AoE, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Shooting Stars is flawed. I mean, New Moon the New Moon is like kind of close. I think the main problem, I know one of the problems that is Full Moon doesn't do astral damage, whereas the other two moon spells do for some reason. So it's just.
I think they just fixed that this build.
okay.
Actually.
it's been bugged for a little bit where it's
They
not doing correct
finally
damage type.
Dude, they changed it to astral damage on the tooltip a month ago, but apparently the spell needs to be flagged, like whitelisted to work with both eclipses, and they just didn't do it for a month. Kind of funny.
I think
Still not usable or good though. It's like poop.
so. New Moon being the talent that came from Legion when the Legion artifact gave this spell baseline. I think it had a 15-second recharge time then. It's 25 now. And I forgot what else. I guess there's also the one legendary that was pretty popular that made it so you could double full moon. So it'd be new moon, half moon, and then 2 full moons before going back. And it was generally really liked for. I mean, it was really good then. And I think obviously without the legendary and the 25-second recharge, it's a little undesired. And Fury Balloon right now is pretty. Actually, Fury Balloon is like does the most damage in this row, I think.
How the row should be is like Fury of Balloon should be stacked AoE, Solstice should be like any relevant like spread AoE or just like normalized stuff. Probably are like our Mythic Plus go-to, because Fury of Balloon's for burst, and then New Moon should be for like single target. Is how this row should play out normally due to tuning. I don't think it's ever played out that way due to tuning. It's like always been a mismatch.
What's up with the decimal damage on New Moon? 517.7 astral damage.
Beats me, man.
Okay.
I no good answer.
I don't know if it like doubled up to the final valley that rounds out or something.
Actually, it's just there.
Okay.
I didn't even know that was there.
Neither did I until right now. Okay, so I guess I'll toss the question out once again, like we did in the 40 row. Well, you guys had already mentioned about the 45. Is this just like a complete dumpster fire for row? Or is this just a numbers thing that we can fix? Like what would you guys like to do with this row, in your minds?
This is numerical for me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty numerical. Babies, I do have problems with Solstice being obviously Shooting Stars has its flaws in itself. So, Solstice actually I think is actually competitive too on single target. I haven't actually looked at the numbers, but because it has the potential, there's just a couple bit of tuning issues that there definitely just is.
Okay. All right, so overall in the tree, not looking great. In fact, the only row that wasn't as Tettles mentioned, a DPS option row that you guys didn't really kind of crap on completely was the 15 row. It was just Warrior Falloon that got the brunt of it. The rest was kind of like, oh yeah, I can take this. So you're 40, 45, and 50 talents, which at least by design, right, the lower down the talent tree you go, the more powerful the spells should be, right? The later ones, they all seem pretty. I mean, I guess fits in the theme that you guys are forming here for Boomkins just being undertuned, right, for the most part.
Well, I think a lot of our talents are just unimpactful. I think it's part of it too. And then relative performance to other specs, I think I would go out and say it's undertuned. Yeah.
But like you keep saying unimpactful, but unimpactful. And then I asked, like, what would you do to it? And most of the answers have just been, oh, like, just raise the numbers. So, like, are you just saying
I would actually swap I would move Twin Moons to the row with like Star-Lord, Soul of the Forest, and Incarn, I would probably like completely remove Star-Lord. Actually, no, I would completely remove Soul of the Forest if they were able to do that. They won't do that because of class fantasy reasons, but I would, or you can move Twin Moons to where Solstice was, and then replace Twin Moons with some unknown talent that I don't know, does something completely different. I have no idea design-wise like what I would even replace it with.
Is there anything in this tree, you know, I'll use the word responsibly here, because everybody kind of wants everything, but is there anything in this tree that you think is so crucial or would help the core of the class so much that it should be baseline?
Moons, maybe? I know that's a big one. I see a lot of people say, like, oh, moons were iconic. Moons were literally a spell that was created in Legion, but also it was a pretty good spell. As a talent, the watered down talent version, kind of bad. But yeah, if they made it baseline, that would also fix our AP generation issues. If we had that back, it was like a big part of our generation in Legion, especially with the full moon legendary. I don't think anything else really needs to be baseline.
I think that the move from shooting stars to baseline was a pretty big deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be a big deal. I don't think it's really a big deal right now. I mean, it's still like pathetically weak. Like I said, like add some crit interaction to it, or like make it not have diminishing returns on AoE. Just make it like straight scaling. Like I think what made it really insane in Legion with no diminishing returns is mostly Cephas in M+. I think like when you proc Cephas and you had like 200% haste or something ridiculous, like you were flooded with AP. It was kind of crazy. Like removing the DR now is not going to flood you with AP. You can't dot things as quickly. You're still not going to take Twin Moons even if it's no DR. Just remove the DR, man.
What do you think, Sang? Anything you want to see baseline, or did Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I think Moons is like a good one. Either that or like again with I wouldn't say Twin Moons would be good baseline. It definitely needs to be moved though, because again, just being against Stellar Drift is just it's just really bad. But I mean, I know like looking at like other talent rows for other classes, like I mean, it's not like this is like a Moonkin only problem. There's definitely some decision making that, and sometimes it's just like pick whatever does the most, and not necessarily choose based on situation thing. So I mean, if that could be one of those rows, if Starfall is good, you pick the Starfall one. If Moonfire is good, you pick the Moonfire one. It's just how it is.
So then outside of like a super duper new talent that they could design, if you were to, let's say, remove Twin Moons or whatever other talent on here, put it baseline or get rid of it, is there anything from the past of Boomkins that you would like to see return to the talent tree? Like a talent that you think would fit really well into the way Boomkin's developing into Shadowlands? Anything off the top of your heads?
Can you imagine if we got Euphoria?
What would that even do, Tettles?
Yes, Tettles.
Increased boat damage.
Yes, say Euphoria. I just remember too many versions of Euphoria, so I actually don't know which one you're talking
about. The decreased time on your clip states. I mean, it would only be good with Balance of All Things, right?
Wait, you want 7.5 second eclipse?
Never mind. I don't think I want that. Never mind. I lied.
What about Shrooms? Chad is also raging about it.
I definitely think
play when the good version of Shrooms was a thing. Yeah. Like Shrooms were really good in Kata, right? But in Mop,
yes,
they were
they were Mop.
Pre-poll only.
You had some uses for them too. It was actually like pretty good on a couple bosses. I can remember specifically. You had Lei Shen, and then you also had Korkon Dark Shamans. Those are like really nice fights to use Shrooms on. But that was actually gonna. Speaking of like that, I was like thinking about like if they can't make Starfall scale like by stackable, like the only other option to fix like the AoE problem also would just to be to add an AoE ability, like another one. That seems like the most unlikely route, but
like baseline, you mean?
I mean, it just had to be another ability that can scale, because Starfall is just you know, you keep it up and can't do much more with else.
Hurricane.
So, yeah, Hurricane, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Hurricane.
Dude, someone in chat is so smart. They should give us a talent that makes our kick not cringe. Wouldn't that be cool?
True.
Yeah, actually, that should be baseline. If you kick a
surprised we
spell,
didn't get
like Solar Beam, it should just make it a 45-second cooldown or something.
Surprised we didn't get a conduit for that.
Yeah, I actually was really expecting like a finesse conduit that was just a straight like copy paste of the Legion artifact thing. Would have been nice.
You're arranged. You're not allowed to have a good interrupt. It's just the way the game
Okay,
is
okay,
played.
but listen, man.
Listening?
Listen. There's not having a good interrupt is 24 seconds, and then there's having whatever the fuck this is with a 1 minute cooldown.
Okay. No,
like,
no. Solar Beam is situationally very strong, though.
I think Solar Beam should only be castable during the daytime. Anyone?
What the fuck? What is wrong with
And then
you?
it turns into Lunar Beam, and it does something else.
Yeah.
I mean, the counter argument to a certain extent, right, is that it's literally an 8-second AoE silence, which is pretty strong, but a minute CD is pretty rough too.
It's situationally really good. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, I think you should have the option to maybe pull back on the silence portion, but have like a shorter cooldown. And that's just like speaking from like general, like outside of like situational gameplay. Like there's just so many times. And there's so many times like, I'll just encounter like a mob out in the world that has like a big heal on it that like casts it every 25, 30 seconds, and there's absolutely nothing I can do. I don't know if anyone's had this experience with those tree guys in Nazjatar that cast that one big heal.
Yep.
It takes like 5 minutes to kill them, just trying to slowly out
and you're trying to get your weekly
you know how I
bark.
kill those? I dual box my Demon Hunter and tab over to kick every time.
There's there's that. I don't know if you've done the intro quest line for. I know you have, Sang, obviously, because you like Torghast as well. But
yeah,
you know the like powerful mob that you need to get the item from, like for the that heals like crazy and does a ton of damage. Man, the amount of times I've done that quest line so many times, and I would say 50% of the time, maybe just by chance, when I've gotten to that mob, there's a Moonkin waiting there on the side, hoping for somebody else to show up in order to be able to kill that mob. But yeah, the pain, man, the pain. Okay, so talent trees were good. Well, I mean, not good, but like we're good in terms of discussion. So let's start to deep dive more into SL specific things. We'll start with covenants. We don't need to talk like anything in depth for covenants, soulbinds, conduits, etc. We'll get to. So really, just the baseline of covenants. Essentially, what is the best covenant? I'll be the Twitch chat guy, but not like, you know, numbers are one thing, right? We all know next week they could just buff one, it'll be crazy numbers. But mechanically speaking, is there anything like what to you guys stands out as the best? We know obviously, what was it? Not Kindred Spirits, Convoke the Spirits for you guys was nerfed like 2 weeks ago, something like that. So what are we looking at in terms of covenant preference?
I think that we are all in alignment with saying that we really would prefer to be Night Fae. Like,
yeah, I mean, Night Fae is always, it's just a lot of fun parts of that, and I think Convoke the Spirits is probably one of the most fun abilities I've ever seen in this game, and it's a shame to see it nerfed.
You cannot convince me that there's a single Druid player on planet Earth that would choose to be a weird blue angel or a vampire over playing Night Fae.
well,
Night
it's also
Fae
our
is
class
the
fantasy.
Druid Covenant.
Yeah.
But given the nerf, are you guys being forced into Ravenous Frenzy?
Yes,
Absolutely,
unfortunately.
yes.
Like, it's that bad?
It's do you want to pull up? I actually have damage numbers sim wise. If you want to pull them up,
Yeah, go for it. Just put them here in the chat if you have them. I'll put them on screen.
here, and you can click through the. I got timed out. We're mad.
Where would you get? Man, not that chat, but I got you.
Oh, hold on.
That's fine. I got it now. Don't worry. I meant the. Okay, it's up. Go ahead.
You already got it. Anyway, so yeah,
Is
you
this
can
from,
kind of
is this
click
from
through.
WoW Meta?
No. These are our own. These are our own sims, man. We use We use Simulation Craft, please.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Shout out. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Shout out to the Druid Sim guys. By the way, those guys are a lifesaver, man. They're so good at what they do.
as a point of reference, Night Fae, scaling wise, is only like super solid on single target as it currently stands because most of its damage is fronted into Star Surge. And basically, we can't have multiple Starfalls at once, and so there's like a lot going on with that.
Okay.
So you see right now on single target, like with like a Legendary and Covenant combo, Vinthier is about 200 DPS ahead of Night Fae, which is Night Fae's best damage profile, and that just gets exacerbated once you start adding additional targets because Vinthier actually scales on AoE where Night Fae doesn't.
So how? Wait, it's worse than Kyrian now, numerically speaking.
Yes.
So where was Night Fae before the 25% nerf, roughly?
5% ahead of Vinthier, ish.
Oof. Only. So why did they
On
dump?
one target. On one target.
So on 2 targets, it was still slightly ahead of Vinthier. And then, like, once you start getting to higher target counts, it starts getting worse. Especially since Vinthier's scaling with Arcanic Pulsar starts to become like of a factor because Balance of All Things just doesn't scale as well on AoE as Arcanic Pulsar.
So there's just, at least from what I'm seeing numerically, there's just zero consideration for Necrolord. Does it have any like mechanical benefit at all?
You don't want to play Necrolord. No. Unsay that.
Okay, let's explain real quick what the Necrolord ability does.
Go for it.
It's a 20 or 25 second cooldown dot, single target that you apply, and it buffs the damage of your damage over time effects.
What's that Moonfire and Sunfire damage? Let's go!
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time talking about how our dots are, for lack of a better phrase, dog shit.
A man of culture, I see.
Yeah,
True.
you're never in a million years going to go Necrolord. It's not. It has not once been a consideration.
Nope. I can't wait till right after this show on like Wednesday they like triple the damage of your dots.
Stop, please.
And Necrolord is just the best by far. Make it happen.
Please stop.
So, but to these covenants, none of them really provide. Like as an example here, you know, in the world of DKs, right? Most DKs from a damage profile care about Night Fae, maybe some slight consideration for Venthyr, some DPS profiles for like if you're running nothing but M+. But Night Fae is kind of the way to go. However, Necrolord for DKs has a lot of mechanical benefit because it almost adds like an AoE grip, like a secondary AoE grip for blood. Is there nothing like that mechanically advantageous for any of these? Like Kyrian, nothing like that? Is it just all purely a numbers game for you guys?
It's so I actually thought the decision making was interesting between Convoke and Ravenous Frenzy before, because Ravenous Frenzy does scale so well on AoE. It made a lot more sense. Like that may very well be the Mythic Plus choice because Convoke was purely single target, where Convoke and Night Fae would be more of a single target or raid focused decision. So there was actually decision making to be had. Now, I guess we're in a better spot because there's actually no decision to be made. Vinthier is the best on single target and on AoE, so we don't actually have to give up anything. We're just edgy idiots now.
Isn't this basically a big W, right? Because now you don't have to worry about covenant
Honestly,
swapping.
as a high-end PvE player, you know, I'll take my small victories, right?
My issue is playing other specs of my class.
That's
Yeah. Also, what if you want a PvP?
that one's cringe for PvP.
Catch me dead catching Ravenous Frenzy in PvP.
Yeah, also, I'm pretty sure, like, probably part of the Night Fae. I mean, I get it. Night Fae Convoke could do some insane stuff in PvP, for sure. Especially as an off-spec Druid. Like, you could actually just, like, kill another player as a Resto Druid instantly with that ability. But now, I mean, I don't know. It's just, like, rough to, like, see. Because, like, if you want to, like, Necrolord is absolutely trash for Moonkin. But I think it's, like, might be decent for one or two of the other specs, like Resto and Feral or Guardian, or not Guardian. What am I saying there? But it's just like I don't know. I don't like that there's a completely dead covenant to us, and then we're basically just Venthyr, and it's like a pretty bad
Well,
ability.
yeah, I do think that it really limits our ability to be able to multi-spec because the only people who want Venthyr are Moonkins, basically, right? So we are sacrificing a lot to play any other specs, but we do have it pretty good that we don't actually have to pick a hard choice, right? We just have the best of all worlds.
That's kind of the theme of the expansion, right? Alt friendly, but fuck you if you want to play an alt spec.
Yeah.
It's alt friendly,
Let's go.
but spec unfriendly, like multi-spec unfriendly.
Which is weird because Druid is like the class that you pick if you want to play literally every single role, and they have actually kind of ruined our like the Covenant system because they're trying to make it fit for completely unique roles.
It's not really as bad though as you guys are saying, right? Because if you wanted to, like saying if you wanted to play, you know, PvP or whatever, then you would just level your second Druid and your third Druid and your fourth Druid and then swap whenever you want between them, right? No problem there. Oh, so good.
Good leveling experience. They're trying to work on that. I mean, they think that people are going to be leveling the same characters, so they're working on that.
Salute. I guess it should be said that Ravenous Frenzy actually just is unplayably bad in PvP because it has a negative component to it where if you don't cast for 2 seconds, you take like an insane amount of
You
damage.
see a Druid at 20 stacks, Ravenous Frenzy, just throw a silence on them and still die.
Here, let me read the tooltip for you. 3% of your health per stack.
Have any
You
of
frequently get 25 plus stacks.
have any of you died from it in all of beta and
Yes.
alpha?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Didn't jumping used to make it work? Did they change that?
Shifting is
Shifting.
like how you do it. Like
Okay.
basically,
Meleeing does too.
yeah, what happens is like, so when I'm out in the world and I kill a mob in like 10 seconds and I still have 10 seconds Ravenous Frenzy, I have to spam shapeshift for like just to not
Yeah.
die to that.
Immersion.
Meleeing also works, which is nice for Feral because they would otherwise be like energy starved, right? And like just sitting there. But yeah, it's kind of scuffed. It's the only Covenant, little known fact, it's the only Covenant with an active downside.
That's weird. I mean, it doesn't seem so crazy powerful that it needs that downside, right? Like, I'm not really sure. It's just odd. Anyways, before I move on, though, last thing about Covenants, is there anything in the general Covenant abilities that particularly is good or helps Boomkin? Like, you know, Venthyr Portal, Necrolord Shield, etc.?
Well, Soul Shape is basically Displacer Beasts, which they pruned from this class expansion. So that was kind of cool. If I was ever going to play that Covenant.
I mean, Moonkin has an abnormally large amount of movement as is, right? Like movement like that, rather. Our movement issues are typically like, if we describe movement issues, it's more like moving while casting kind of stuff. Like we have Wild Charge, we have Dash, we have, I don't know if you're High Mountain Thorn, you have Bull Rush and stuff like that. Like there's enough like movement options, especially since you can like shapeshift into cat form and stuff too, to where we don't necessarily need like Door of Shadows or Soul Shape.
Right. And Stellar Drift, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And like Stamp Roar and shit. Like we have a lot of tools to be able to deal with movement. I guess the Necrolord one, the shield would be nice, but that would be cringe for me to play Necrolord.
All right.
Moonfire and Sunfire, let's go!
Give me the little servant, dude. I want the butler. Yo, we were talking about this before we started the show. I was like, dude, I wish if we were Kyrian, we could just become Swolkin.
Yeah, man.
Maybe they'll add that as a skin, or like,
It'd be dope.
or as a allied race with a Druid option.
It's my real class fantasy.
Maybe in a couple expansions. I mean, I think the rotation goes like cats and bears get new forms every expansion for like the last 6 or something, or like they get a rework or like an updated model. And Moonkin has gotten one updated model in its entire lifetime.
Yeah, you got the extra toe.
Maybe like 3 or 4 expansions from now. Oh, that's true. We get an extra toe.
There you go.
I forgot about that. Never
We're
mind.
handsome. Don't put me
Never
down. We're
mind.
handsome.
You know, everything's relative, Tettles. So okay, let's start to get deeper into it. Let's talk about Soulbind's conduits. Soulbinds, there's not usually too much to spend on. It's more if there's something particularly broken for a Soulbind that you want to mention. But between them constantly changing Soulbinds and lack of, honestly, a lot of customization with Soulbinds. Not too much to say, but nonetheless, I don't want to detract from it. So Soulbinds, is there anything for you guys for Soulbinds that sticks out across all 4 of the covenants that is just mandatory, OP, etc.?
I don't mandatory.
Think so. Sang, you would be more experienced with this, I think.
With Conduits and Soulbinds, I don't know about
just
that.
Soulbinds, I think.
Yeah, just the Soul. We'll get into Conduits in a sec, but anything for Soulbinds stick out to you?
The euphoria from that one that you're looking at right now from Vinthier is actually good. The very last one, but even
Thrill
then
Seeker?
it's Thrill Seeker, whatever it is.
Here's the problem with a lot of. I mean, again, I speak of this from world first perspective. Is you're gonna be heavily like time gated on these things, and you're only gonna see like the first 2 Soulbinds and like maybe like the first 3 rows throughout the entire progression cycle. The first one, anyways. So I mean, I honestly haven't like looked too much into it, especially with how I'm afraid of like is number tuning done or not. So it's like really hard for me to actually have like a solid input on the Soulbinds yet or Conduits.
There's a couple cool and like interesting effects on a couple of the Soulbinds. Like Sank said, you're not going to see most of them for progression. Not even just like world first progression. Like you can look at that. What was it? Thrill Seeker requires. Did that say Renown 39 on there?
39, yeah. That's
Oh
right.
my god! When are we getting that?
Months
10.0
into the yeah, pretty much. Like you get 3 Renown a week. That's bad.
13 weeks, man. Oh my god. That's like that. Maybe next patch, right?
Yeah.
Might be like the B
towards
patch.
the
13
end.
weeks. That's like close.
This
right?
is probably like I think this system in terms of time gating is probably built to take you like towards the mid end of 9.0, and then whatever else they're going to develop after that. I don't think it would
Hall of
spill
Fame
into
will be
9.1.
filled out way before then, certainly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in the Soulbinds, like there's a couple really interesting choices. I think like what is it? You can freely switch between the Soulbinds. It's just the Conduits that are weekly, which that's quite something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Soulbinds are like just kind of whatever.
So nothing crazy, right? Like I mean, you guys didn't jump out on anything that was like, oh yeah, this is like 100% the way to go. Most people usually
Theotar's
say
got a
Naja.
pretty cool one.
Theotar?
Yeah, the second dude
Yep.
in the middle of the tree, he's got an umbrella.
Oh yes.
I mean, that's
Gives
the
you
parasol.
a nice little mastery buff. Yeah.
Those are just like damage questions. Like being a DPS spec, we literally are just playing whichever one sims the highest. Like it doesn't actually affect anything really.
Okay. So then let's get into Conduit talk. Before we hit up the potency, like the bread and butter usually for DPSers, your offensively oriented conduits. Any notable for endurance or finesse, aka like defensive or utility? Anything that stands out? Some of the other specs have had actually some pretty damn good ones. Some of the other ones,
Yeah.
The endurance one's own.
I like the the one frenzied regen one actually. I think was pretty cool. It was like where you fall below a certain percent health and you just get frenzied regen. It's like a 2-minute cooldown or something like that. It's just kind of like a nice little...
When you fall below 25% health, you cast frenzied regen up to once every 90 seconds.
Yeah, it's like it's a pretty decent bonus for...
Dude, that goes down to 37.5 seconds at max rank.
That's actually really good. What? Huh. I didn't even know that was good. The one that I was thinking of is you maintain shapeshift movement speed for a few seconds after shifting out of the form, and that one feels pretty fun.
Is that a
That's
finesse?
a finesse.
That's finesse, yeah.
Tough as Bark is a really good one. The bear form one is really good. There's a lot of physical damage in this raid, and the bear form one gives you 4 seconds of extra armor and health when you shift into bear form. Could be the difference between living and dying in a lot of situations, I think.
So you guys actually have some good stuff here. I don't know if I'm seeing...
Yeah, just don't look at our potency conduits.
We have to.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything in the utility row that... I guess there's like a bit of support. The Rebirth one and Stampeding Roar stuff.
Yeah, I think the Stampeding Roar one is probably like gonna be like probably the one there, just because again it's just like a stampeding roar is a really good ability for all the Druids to have. So I think it's gonna be very good to take.
More to the point, I don't think any of them are like overly impactful. I think that they are all like situationally not bad.
Yeah, they are very nice bonuses.
Yeah. Well, you definitely. I mean, like with all the shows we've done so far, you definitely are in the certainly higher end of quality for finesse and endurance, based on what I'm seeing and what you guys have said. Some of the other ones are legit useless for some of the classes.
I think that comes to the fact that like Druid has had so many revisions on our covenants too. Like we've had so many fucking changes to like all of our covenants. It's something silly. Like we've had the most posts by a mile, like the most blue posts. Like some people complain about how many blue posts their spec get or their class gets. Druid just gets one every single week.
True. All right. Well, I hate to do it, but not really. But let's dive into the potency. So you guys have obviously everybody should have 8 potency. So you got the 4 balance ones, and then the 4 covenant ones. Let's talk about them. You don't want to. Who wants to spearhead?
Oh, sure. I'll take it.
All right,
let's
it.
Go. So there's two good ones.
Okay.
Fury of the Skies is really good. Makes Moonfire and Sunfire a bit more worth casting, which is nice.
Okay. But a little bit, but definitely a step in the right direction.
I'm linking some sims in our chat as well if you want to pull those up, Salute. As a single target and 5 targets, or what those are.
Hang on, for which Tettles? Is this for covenants or? Sorry, for conduits.
Those are conduits, yeah.
Okay, let me hang on. Oh, I see.
Those don't have any of the covenant specific ones. Those are just the balanced Druid specific ones.
Okay, let me. I'll put them like on the side. Sorry, go on, Gabe.
Yeah, and the Venthyr specific conduit, Endless Thirst. That one's also really good. And all the rest suck.
Yeah, I mean, Fury of the Skies design is really strong for balanced Druid. Basically, it is a stacking damage increase every like whenever you have targets Moonfire or Sunfired, you like make them more vulnerable to your arcane or nature damage.
Is it stacking? I thought it was just flat.
Maybe it's just flat. Actually,
the stacking one was like a wad.
The stacking one was the Legion like artifact weapon. You're right.
Yeah, Legion.
So Fury and the second one you said Endless Thirst.
Yeah.
Yes, which is the Venthyr.
Which is the Venthyr, right? So Ravenous.
The one that's currently bugged that gives you 100% crit on beta. But like once it works properly, it's still like the best conduit by far. I think.
The Knife one, Conflux of Elements as well, is also really strong. Basically, we are playing like Covenant specific conduit plus Fury of Skies, and then I don't know, Umbral Intensity, I guess.
So what are your so you have Fury of Skies, Umbral Intensity, which is Eclipse's damage bonus to Wrath and Starfire starts 20% stronger up to 48. This one is just meh, or.
Yeah, they're all just kind of meh. I mean,
Except
none of them
Fury.
really. Exactly, none of them actually really do anything except for Furious Guys. Which is that a trend for pretty much all classes? Like you would know better than us, Loot.
I mean, the reason I was curious to kind of dig at all of them rather than just which one's the best, like end of discussion, is because some of there's definitely variance, right? Like amongst some of the specs have not only impactful ones, but more interesting ones that at least maybe change your gameplay a bit. Like very minor stuff, but it's like, oh, here's a proc, I have to maybe react to this proc, or here's a small damage window, let me react to this. Whereas some other specs, a lot of their conduits are just, here's 5% damage to a rotational ability.
Yeah, I think that's what ours fall under. They're just all damage.
Yeah, so you have duration of Celestial Alignment increased by 4 seconds up to 9.6. Which other ones you have here? Stellar Inspiration. Star Surge and Starfall have 8% chance to empower Eclipse or extend Moonfire and Sunfire by double the amount. I'm not sure how interesting that one is to you. Fury of the Skies we talked about, and then Umbral Intensity was, as we said, Eclipse's damage bonus to Wrath and Starfire starts 20% stronger up to 48. No. What about, do you guys have no interest in Stellar Inspiration? Like, outside of numbers? Like, does that do anything for you guys in terms of gameplay, or no?
That's the extend.
Yeah.
That's the extension on the dots. I mean, I think if maybe, if it was slightly more. Oh, they removed the Eclipse part of it, but it's just
did they?
now.
Okay. That sucks.
I think if it was slightly more interesting, maybe if it like extended dots more frequently, it would be cooler. But right now, it's also hard to like get great benefit out of that to where it's like a meaningful change because you're just going to dot during your pandemic window anyways. I don't know. I do think that it could be slightly more interesting, but
I think one of the biggest issues I've identified with a lot of these shows, rather, when we start talking about conduits and all of these, powers and systems and core abilities, is that a lot of specs identify like one major flaw. So, like, just as an example, Mistweavers complained a lot about their mastery, right? And then you finally get to the conduit section, which is what I'm getting at with you guys, and then their issue gets doubled down on. So, like, all of their conduits are to do with mastery. You guys have a bunch of conduits to do with your dots that do garbage damage, right? So it's hard to kind of get excited about anything that does, well, nothing.
Are conduits supposed to be fun? Like, I have never been excited for conduits. Maybe other specs and other classes are, but like,
fun
I
how?
read
From,
ours,
from a gameplay design perspective, or like what they do?
What are they supposed to? Are they supposed to do something that's like impactful, or are they supposed to just be a menial like 2% damage increase? I'm not exactly sure what they're supposed to do.
I think they're meant to be like kind of Azerite tradey, but maybe moving slightly more towards
because
some form of gameplay involvement.
I read that Ian post, and like he said that like they identify conduits as a way to like tune covenants to be a little bit more impactful.
Right.
So like I guess how I understood it is like, okay, so Necrolord is target capped at 2 targets, and it's never going to, you actually just cannot do more damage with Necrolord past 2 targets. Like it's fundamentally flawed by that. So the conduit for Necrolord should increase your AoE damage by 20% is how I understood it, but like that's just not the case.
I feel like the whole design in general of conduits and soulbinds is just to be essentially a replacement for artifact power grinding. It's like renown, so it's like just general progression past max level.
Sure.
That they want to have in the game.
Yeah, but it's also not like an unlimited farm system, right?
Yeah,
it's just
it's just like, yeah, that's what I think it's basically supposed to be. Is it's just like just little gains. I think they're supposed to be tiny and just some kind of progression after max level.
Yeah,
and with some customization in the form of conduits.
I think you're right. Any notable on the Kyrian or, well, Necrolord, I suppose, as well? Conduit?
Kyrian Conduit actually is a damage loss.
Okay.
It desyncs with it desyncs with our cooldowns, making it a damage loss. It makes Kyrian the Kindred Spirits 10% reduced duration.
What's the name? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Deep Allegiance.
Deep Allegiance. Okay, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kindred Spirits empowerment cooldown is reduced by 10% down to 24.
So it's a minute flat, right? And most classes have damage windows inside of a minute. Like I don't know a class that has like damage and like we're tied to somebody else, so we're based on their damage. So that one is actually damage loss because nobody has like damage cooldowns at that weird ass interval.
Yeah, anyone with a 47-second DPS cooldown in the chat, I'd love to sync up with you with Kindred Spirits. Like, who makes this?
Swipe right. This is probably more of like a Healy tanky thing, I would say, looking at it.
I definitely think that it probably is the case, because I know like Kyrian is like some of the other versions of that, like not just the damage one, are actually potentially they have interactions for sure. Yeah, I can see stuff like that happening.
And then the last one on Necrolord, just for fullness sake here, Evolved Swarm. Adaptive Swarm increases. Okay, no.
It increases your
periodic damage by an additional 6%. Oh no, sorry, increases periodic effects. So once again, doubles down on your dots, which are crap.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, you guys are gonna get your dots buffed out the ass in the next like few weeks.
I just, our dots are just so bad, man. I don't know what to do.
But I mean, when I said that before, you guys were like, "Oh no, don't say that." Like, do you not want do you want to just move away from dot gameplay, or like, do you not want them to be buffed? Like, what do you want with them?
No, don't buff Necrolord. Buffing the dots is fine.
I'm talking about Sunfire, Moonfire right now.
Yeah, no, that'd be really good.
I actually don't even necessarily want the dots buffed. I want them to interact with our kit in a more meaningful way.
Just need them to do something.
Yeah, beyond the scope of just being a high DPE. Basically, right now, they're just like a high DPET button. They're just efficient, is all it is. It doesn't flow or interact with the kit in any meaningful way, so it feels, I don't know, it just feels awkward to press sometimes. Not that it's necessarily awkward, but
I also just want the damage of them buffed as well.
yeah.
Yeah, they
Hey, like,
just... Go ahead.
Look at what they did for Shadow's dots. You put Shadow's dots up on a target. They have a Conduit that has a chance to make their next spender cast free, their next DP free. Baseline, it has a chance to give them an extra charge of Mind Blast, and that scales with the number of dots they have active. And make it instant cast. Where is the interaction with our kit? Oh, it's shooting stars. We gain 2 astral power on a proc that has diminishing returns.
Wouldn't really call that an interaction, though, right? This is like a passive effect.
Yeah. It's just like a worse version of what warlocks get. Like warlocks get shard generation through their dots. We get AP, but
so
bad
not
AP.
a thing.
Are warlocks like the Havoc Demon Hunters of ranged? The why bring Boomkin when you can bring Warlock?
That's right.
They're oppressively strong. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not bitter towards warlocks like most melee are towards Havoc Demon Hunters though.
It's not why
Fuck warlocks.
All right.
Fuck warlocks.
This is why I saved Warlocks for last after all the ranged. So I'd be like, so, here's what everyone else thinks. Okay, so Conduits, summary, I guess, Conduits here is, you have actually some interesting and cool endurance and finesse, and basically, 2 of your 8 potency Conduits are good. One of them being tied to a Covenant, nonetheless. So really just innately Boomkin related ones. Fury of the Skies is the only okay one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know what the goal of the Conduits really are though. So it's hard to tell how bad they truly are.
I think you're seeing them here, right?
Yeah.
The goal is, I would say you guys are on the lower end of interesting Covenants in terms of design. Like I said, there's some ones, nothing is crazy with Conduits. I've never seen anything completely changes your spec or how this button works. But there have been some where it's hey, this button now has a chance to proc this, or it gives you a little damage window. I don't really think you guys have anything like that. They're all pretty maintenance-y from what I can see, so they're definitely a bit dull in that aspect, which is probably why you feel the way you do, Tettles.
I mean, I'm okay with it. It just is what it is, right? Doesn't need to be something special. It's just a Conduit, right?
But it could be fun.
True. Yeah, it's true.
Okay, let's move over then to the old Legos. So you got and what I'm particularly, I'm curious about, obviously, your 4 baseline Boomkin ones, and I'm curious about your generic Druid ones and if they feed into Boomkin at all. But being a class, actually the only class with so many different roles, you have a lot of kind of cross-pollination between potential legendaries. Is there anything like that for Boomkin? Is there any legendary in Feral, Guardian, or Resto that you're oh, that's actually super good for Boomkin, or is that just completely tied off?
Not that I think of. I think there's some of the generics that are not god awful, but more often than not, I can't think of anything that's right for Guardian, Feral, or Resto that's oh, this is ideal for me. I think Resto plays some Moonkin ones, but that's about it.
Okay. Right. So wants to conduct this train for legendary talk? Whoever wants to grab it.
Gabe, you want to start?
Oh boy. Okay.
Why you gotta throw him on the bus like that, Tettles?
Well,
that's
I don't
fine,
sit in
that's
silence, man. It'll be awkward to just sit in silence.
I was just thinking if I wanted to do it or not. It's not great. We have a couple confusing designs, I guess you could say. The primary one that I've been opposed to from the start is Balance of All Things. Boat. It gives us front-loaded crit at the start of an eclipse that decays over 5 seconds, I think.
Yep.
But I've talked a bit about how we have no crit interaction in the kit. So why do we have a legendary that gives us crit? On top of that, they've made the playstyle less degenerate since the eclipse changes a couple patches ago, but it's still just really boring. It doesn't interact at all. Dreamcatcher is cool in theory, and does have kit interaction, but I don't think I'm a big fan of the watered down version. So like in Legion,
What the hell's Dreamcatcher? Sorry, I'm just trying to find it here.
oh sorry,
It's,
it's called
Dreambinder.
The
Dreamweaver.
Dreambinder.
Or
Yeah,
Dreambinder.
Yeah, I got you.
It used to be called Emerald Dreamcatcher. We're all idiot boomers and call it Dreamcatcher even still.
Okay.
Hey, dude.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
call them
Sorry.
other current things.
Oh, you're good. You
They're
good.
weird.
Shut up, Sang.
Shut up.
Yeah, so it was really cool at the start of Legion. It completely changed your playstyle and your rotation. You played around it, and it was really powerful. Probably overpowered. But it was a bit polarizing, I guess, because how well you could use it was based on your latency. The buff window was 3 seconds on the initial Legion version, versus I think this version is a 6-second buff.
Yep.
It's like substantially weaker to compensate for that. And so if you had like high latency, you basically needed to hit haste breakpoints, and with high latency you needed like 10%, 20% more haste to reach the same breakpoints to be able to keep the buff up. And obviously that's pretty problematic from a design perspective. So they changed it to make it weaker but made it a 5-second buff. But that just made it no fun to play anymore. And this is an even more watered down version than what it got changed to in Legion after the first patch. It's just really not any fun to play. Pulsar's great. It's a straight upgrade from the BFA version of Pulsar, because it is based off astral power spent, which is something we asked for all of BFA, by the way. Please make Pulsar based off astral power spent. It would have gone a long way towards making Starfall less garbage. So they did that for this expansion, so that's nice. It's pretty fun to play, I'd say. Probably because a lot of our power is concentrated into our cooldowns, like we've mentioned before. Now, what's the other legendary?
Oneth's Clear Vision.
Oh, yeah, that's a copy-paste of a Legion legendary, but the proc rate in Legion was 20%. This one's 15%. Still doesn't have any, like, bad luck protection or RPPM on its procs. Just completely random. And also remember that we were generating 12 astral power a second in Legion, and we generate 5.5 astral power a second now.
Yeah.
So
You know something?
it's complete garbage.
Go Sang.
They say also in Legion, Starfall was spammable, stackable, whereas you can only have one active right now in Shadowlands.
So right now, if you were to get your 50 Astral and you're only 5 seconds of your 10 into Astral, recasting it would just refresh it to 10 seconds? Is that...
Pandemics at 2.
Okay.
It'll refresh to 13 seconds. It's
Right.
actually-
Okay. Yeah.
3.
So,
Okay.
dot style. Okay. It's 30% on top of base. Yeah, as usual. Okay.
You wanna know something interesting, Sloot?
Nope. No, I'm just
Between Oneth's Clear Vision and
Okay.
Lycara's Fleeting Glimpse, Lycara's is the generic one. Lycara's gives you a free Starfall every 45 seconds. That is more astral power efficient than Oneth's Clear Vision.
Okay. So
a complete
just to say
generic.
how bad it is, basically what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a point of reference of how bad it is.
So what I'm getting here is, Gate, based on what you're saying, is Pulsar is it. That's it. Like that's your go-to kind of thing. Or
Boat is really good.
Boat is like the raid, like single target legendary.
Okay.
But it doesn't feel good to play
Right.
ever. And Pulsar is definitely the go-to for AoE, I think. I think also if numerically, like, if they're similar, I think you're just going to play Pulsar on progression anyway, because it gives you more, like, periods of Incarn. Depends on how it lines up on a fight, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you can get it active, like, at a time where you normally wouldn't have your cooldown, 9 seconds of your cooldown for, like, when ads spawn or something, that'd be really potent.
So is this basically like, I mean, can we kind of break it down into Pulsar M plus Boat raid-ish? Obviously,
yeah.
Obviously exceptions either way, like, Kale Fast, things like that. But, and absolutely no notables on the generics. Circle of Life and Death, Drought.
Circle of Life and Death
Focus.
is actually kind of close damage-wise once you start adding more additional targets. To the point where I wonder if we end up catching like some dot buff if Circle of Life and Death is actually going to be relevant, because it is it starts to get kind of close around the 4 to 5 target range to whether or not it's actually competitive with Pulsar.
Really?
Fun fact of Circle of Life and Death. So you could probably call Starfall a damage over time effect, right? It's a buff on you, and it does damage to everything around you over time. I'd call that a dot. Not affected by that legendary, but the Necrolord ability does boost the damage of Starfall. They're both worded to say that they increase periodic damage, but you know that legendary could be good if it worked on Starfall, but it does not.
Yeah.
Sounds like an oversight, maybe. Perhaps.
Maybe? I'm not 100% sure. It's hard to say, right? I think that they just wanted Necrolord to not just be total trash tier for balance, but didn't want Circle of Life and Death to be the only AoE option, maybe?
I assume there's no point even talking about Draft of Deep Focus. Moonfire, Rake, Rip, Rejuve on a single target increase their effect by moving along.
What is that one? Can you
I
run
thought that
one
was
by
a
me?
placeholder for the longest time. Turns out, not a placeholder. It's just what it is.
And like Hara's, I guess we kind of already talked about.
Yeah, somehow better than Onas.
Right. And what about the last one's Oath of the Elder Druid?
Is that the
Effects
That's
of
Echo Wraith.
Yeah.
That's the Heart of the Wild one, which actually I kind of like that one for reasons, but more just obviously utility.
You gonna tell us the reasons, Sang? Or you just gonna say reasons?
I mean, it's like I definitely like. Okay, first of all, you get the 75% amp on your affinity passive, which is that's a lot. It's a pretty big amount if you look at like damage reduction and stuff. So like you're getting like going from 6% damage reduction with Guardian Affinity to 10. It's like it is a very solid utility one, is all I can really just say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like most utility legendaries. If there was a specific, like, allocation to equip a utility legendary, you'd absolutely use it. It's got a great effect.
On a 1 minute cooldown with Heart of the Wild, like just like thinking about like, you know, 1 minute cooldown, you can shift out of form and do big heals on yourself. It's pretty good, especially if like there's a lot of raid things that might happen on 1 minute intervals that you just need to live through, and that could be a really big thing.
So probably good in like PvP and Torghast, I guess.
I think it's really good. PvP probably really good. There's this very situational utility for sure.
Okay,
so.
that's fair.
Would have been nice if maybe they designated 2 classes of legendary, right? Like a utility class and a throughput class, and then you were allowed to wear one of each.
Agreed.
But
I 100%
I think that ship has sailed for now.
Bring back Pradas. Let me wear that. Love that thing.
Okay, so once again, to summarize, feel free to interject if I'm incorrect here, but looks like Pulsar, one of your best, mainly geared more towards AoE currently, but based on tuning, could be good for raid as well, like single target kind of thing. Otherwise, Boat is your raid go-to, and from a utility perspective, Oath. And should they buff anything with dots, keep an eye on Circle.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
But Boat actually gets substantially better if Night Fae is good, though.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if... Do you think they're going to rebuff Convoke? Or do you think they're just going to nerf Ravenous?
I could see Venthyr catching a nerf. I could also see actually a rebuff on Convoke, but like somehow nerfing it for Resto. I actually think the reason that it got nerfed is because Resto was too good with it.
Okay. So now that we've had our deep dive on everything SL as far as Boomkin core goes and talents and SL systems, you know, Conduit, Soulbinds, legendaries, etc. To circle back around and kind of see how do these affect the entire vision of balance going forward into SL. Would you say that any of the gaps in the core of the spec, like some of the Swiss cheese holes, I like to say, you know, like utility and I guess damage niche or profile, everything we identified with the issues at the end of BFA, now that we're losing all of that borrowed power, are these addressed by these Shadowlands systems and talent changes and additions to toolkit like Stampeding Roar, etc.? How do you guys see things as the full picture now moving forward for balance?
I definitely think in general it's I think the changes definitely are all pretty good at covering for what's going to be lost in BFA in terms of just playability and at least some bit of a interesting gameplay, because the only gameplay we had before would have been, it's just all Azerite, Streaking Stars, and Corruption and Essences. That's all we had. So they definitely added enough to say that I think that is a fun spec to play, even without any systems. So obviously there's just a bit of tuning and maybe a bit of a damage profile shift for a little more interaction with, Moonfire and Sunfire, and then just maybe a little more astral power generation to make it a little less spend very long times building and whatnot. But yeah, I mean it's pretty good, I think, in general.
I don't think the Covenants actually just like fill in any of the holes that were actively missing, like most notably like with our dots that we've harped on a bunch, and like our AoE astral power generation. I don't know. I actually think that these systems as a whole work better for Moonkin than the BFA systems do, though.
Okay.
In terms of like essences and Azerite and stuff like that. The Covenant system, I feel like, is just way better suited. The legendaries are, I mean, while not ideal and not perfect, they're better, I think. And it puts Moonkin in a more well-rounded spot.
Okay. What do you think, Gabe?
I pretty much agree with what they said. Better than BFA, but room for improvement, as we've talked about.
All right. So I guess before we move into some Q&A, I just started asking chat if you guys have any questions. Start hitting it up. And if it's something that was answered in the show, by the way, chat, I'll just skip past it because it'll be in the VOD and stuff. You might have just joined halfway through. But before we get to that, what would be your? I mean, obviously we can now talk for another 10 hours when I ask this, but just generally speaking, what's kind of your main one or two wish list points for balance that you think like really needs to get addressed in the next 6-7 weeks, whatever? Saying what do you think? Well, I think I know what you think, but what do you think?
Does Moonfire and Sunfire count as two separate things, or could that be that one?
I think we could group them together into one dot.
All right, yeah. I mean, yeah, those just need a lot more interaction with the class. I've said it enough. Like I love in the past it felt like, when you get more targets in the fight, the class just kind of just seems to flow, and now it's just like it actually makes zero difference if there's 2 targets, 3 targets, and you're just throwing a Moonfire and Sunfire on them because it's slightly more damage effective per global spend. And it's just absolutely no interaction. So yes, the like Shooting Stars diminishing in return needs to go. That's just the number one thing by a lot from me, and or just more Moonfire Sunfire interaction.
Okay,
that's it.
Tettles?
That's an important one for me as well. In addition to that, I feel like the secondary stat scaling problems with that like Balance of All Things and Venthyr kind of present, and even Nightfade to a lesser degree, because Nightfade doesn't make haste worth very much either. I think you end up just like losing a lot of secondary stat scaling, and that I feel like is really problematic.
Gabe, what do you think? What's your wish list, or is it just echo chamber?
Wish lists?
Your top one or two things wish list right now for balance.
Top one or two things. Well, I agree with what they said, but also I'd like to see more power moved into the base spec and less in Incarn. It feels like we do good damage during Incarn, and then for 2.5 minutes we don't do anything.
Actual tank damage. I don't know how we do 2.5k DPS.
We do less than tank damage. Prop paladins, granted their damage is overtuned, I think, but who knows if they even know that. Prop paladins do more damage than we do on single target and on AoE outside of Incarn. What is that? Why? Also, second thing, Fell Essence? Like, reduce the cooldown of my cooldown? Why is it 3 minutes? Why don't I have a Talon or Legendary that reduces it? That's what I want.
Okay. All fair points. Let's leave the prop paladins out of this, please. So moving into
those are good nerfs, bro.
moving into let's do some Q&A here because we have raid testing in about an hour. I know most of us need to head off, so we'll do a few minutes of Q&A and then we can all relax and stuff. The first one is here. Why do you guys want more AoE astral power generation when Starfall is not even stackable?
Because we also want Starfall to be stackable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the biggest deal, is that we want our main AoE spender to actually be our AoE spender. I think I can speak for all three of us. We fucking hate Star Surging on AoE. It is actually the most miserable experience ever, just pressing Star Surge on AoE whenever it's not purely for priority damage. Whenever it is just the ideal damage game, we want to be pressing Starfall over and over again. So giving us a hasted Starfall, a stackable Starfall, a Starfall that completely overrides the first Starfall and just does all of the damage instantly, and like some sort of burst if you drop a second one. Literally anything. I'll take anything at this point.
Man, Tettles, that's
Yep. Played 2 years of Star Surging on up to 8 targets. I never want to do that again.
I'm so salty. I'm so salty about
Get
it.
me out.
I mean, I can even say, like, as like a complete amateur boomkin, just, you know, playing it on alpha beta, just trying it out, people asking, it felt very bad to have like 10 mobs there and then you press single target abilities. Not fun. It says you were probably going to ask this anyway, but do you guys at this point, especially, you know, Sang and Gabe, but just because, you know, world first progression and stuff, do you guys think you're going to be playing Moonkin at this point, or how are things looking for you?
So basically, I think the one big anchor that maybe keeps Boomkin in the raid right now is actually probably just Stampeding Roar. That single ability is probably now. Keep in mind, I can go to any druid. So I mean, if Resto Druid or Feral or some other druid like might take that spot.
Feral.
But Stampeding Roar, I think, is like one of the hardest things that keeps it in the raid, because that's probably like literally the one thing Warlock doesn't have. They can't make
the
I mean, they have Gateway. It kind of makes the raid go faster. So I mean, there's even room for that. But I mean,
the Warlock reference again, man.
Yeah,
throw that shade.
I honestly, like, without, I mean, tuning still has to come. So maybe like it just the other classes have everything. There's still the immunity problem. Immunities have like always come up in almost every raid. You know, you got mages for that. Warlocks have insane health pool. It's like I mean, I hate flaming those two classes, but basically those two combined generally do better damage and have all the tools that
Moonkin
doesn't have.
Moonkin has substantially more durability in some situations,
Yes.
though, and in addition to that, like the mobility can be nice situational.
I'm gonna addendum here for a sec, Gabe, before you give your input, because this is something actually we end up asking during the show, but because Boomkin's kind of halfway there, halfway not. The whole topic of utility and the meta subject of utility and trying to bring unique utility to all these different specs, you know, AI for mages, battle shout for warriors, etc. You know, Moonkin obviously doesn't have anything like that. What's your guys' general view on the way that, you know, Blizzard's approaching this kind of unique utility, like kind of trying to double down on here's more unique utility, here's, you know, Deva Aura now for paladins and all this kind of stuff that nobody else brings. Do you want to see them move away from that? Do you want them eliminated completely? Do you want them to homogenize? Do you like that, you know, one class brings just this thing, and so you kind of like, you have to have a mage in the raid, right, for hardcore progression a lot of the time, etc. So what do you guys think of that? Gabe, go ahead.
Multiple classes should bring similar utility. Use Battle Res or Lust as the perfect example. 3 classes bring each of those. So why not do 3 classes bring int buff, strength buff, physical debuff, magic debuff? Like, sure, you could call that homogenization, but that fixes all of those problems out of the gate. You can also have unique stuff. Things like Roar is shared with Shaman Totem, and they're even on the same cooldown. A 3rd class getting a speed boost for the raid would be fine. Similarly, there are problematic things like raid DRs that really push out other healers other than paladins and disc priest that are probably way too powerful, but I wouldn't really quantify that as like utility. You know, when I think utility, I think speed boost, raid buff, or raid mobility in general, like Warlock Gate. Multiple classes should bring stuff like that.
Okay. And I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Did you have a thought particularly about Moonkin's presence in like raiding and what you're going to be playing if you're going to be playing it for the beginning of the expansion?
Yeah, if any of the other Druid specs or any of the Shaman specs are meta and can bring Rar to the raid, I'm going to be maining bench for this tier, I think, with Sang.
Okay. You can hold hands too. Maybe. Saying Tettles, what do you guys think of the meta utility class specificity issue?
I pretty much like hard agree on the like. I think the utility is nice, but I definitely think that more than one single class should bring most of that stuff. Like demon hunters being the sole bringers of the magic debuff, and monks being the only ones. I like. It's pretty annoying to have that to only one class, and I know at least I've had my share of raiding with friend guild as well, and there's plenty of times where like our one mage is just out for the day and we're progressing a really hard boss or close to it, and just not having that buff just hurts that day, and it feels awful to have it only tied to a single class. So I think expanding most of that utility stuff to 3 classes or about that is a pretty good thing that they should do. And I think Moonkin should definitely get at least something in addition to what they have right now.
I'm gonna make a separate point. I actually think that Moonkin has the most. I'll talk about Mythic Plus, I guess. Here, I'll use this platform to talk about Mythic Plus. Moonkin has by far the most mob control, and like Druid generally has the most mob control out of all the classes in the game. Like maybe Rogue, maybe Monk. Like both of those two are kind of close. Maybe Blood Decay, something like that. But Druid generally is going to be some of the highest mob control, and Moonkin got a lot of utility coming into Shadowlands, but it's all like dungeon stuff, which makes Moonkin look more favorable for dungeons if we are even close to tuned appropriately, because we have like substantially more dungeon utility. And that's nice, like straight up. I think that there are a lot of people who play Moonkin just to do Mythic Plus, especially with how strong it was in Legion and Mythic Plus. And there's a lot of people who continue to play Balanced Druid right now because of that, like how strong it just was back then during Legion. And I don't know. I think that it is allowed to be slightly less raid focused and slightly more Mythic Plus focused, as it has been previously, which is part of the slightly worse single target, substantially better AoE argument that we've made, as like that is kind of part of our identity.
Okay. Fair.
Utility also only matters to a point, right? Like, there's very rarely going to be a situation in Mythic Plus where you go at a pack, you try to solve a problem, and you're like, well, we could use utility to solve this, and that's great. Moonkin has a lot of it. Or we can just bring a class that does more damage and power through it that way. And most of the time, for a situation, a timed game mode like Mythic Plus, more damage is going to be the answer. So if we're tuned in a way that our damage is not the best, but up there, then it's fine. And then
it's
you're
not even
like,
close,
okay.
Actually. Yeah.
Yeah, then you're just like, okay, well, this class does a lot of damage, and they bring all this utility. We definitely want to bring it, or we probably want to bring it. Versus, okay, you've got Treants and Ursals and Typhoon and a single target stun and an AoE silence, but you do 25% less damage in this other class? See you later, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Just bring the Warlock.
It's that Outlaw Rogue shit. It's that Outlaw Rogue shit from current BFA, where it's like, it's not the best damage. The utility that it brings is so valuable that you're going to bring it anyways.
Right. And kind of to Sang's point, there's a big difference in utility that's like roar.
It's mob control.
Right. Yeah. Or mob control versus like here's literally 5% damage for all casters, right? Different kinds of utility. The active ones are certainly much easier to discuss and talk about and balance and add things to, whereas just one class being like, I increase everybody's magic damage by 5% is a bit weird. Especially in M+, where you have even more limited spots. Nonetheless, let's get back to a few more questions here. I asked the talent version of this, but is there any baseline spell you guys have on your wish list that you want back to balance?
Moons.
It's a talent.
Yeah. Baseline spell? Shit. I think it has to be like the mushrooms or a hurricane, right? Like it's like with how current Starfall is slated to be, like if we had another AoE button, that would be really nice.
Okay.
People are saying symbiosis. There's no fucking way that Blizzard would be... Dude, there's absolutely zero chance that you're ever getting symbiosis back. I'm sorry.
Symbiosis is a really fun ability, but it was fun because it was like completely broken. I'd love to have it back, but I agree. We're never going to see it again.
Yeah, everyone's saying moons, but that's a talent.
Yeah, I misunderstood the question.
Oh, yeah. Of course, everyone wants
Still want it, though.
You want it. Yeah, shit.
If moons were added baseline again and had an interaction with eclipses, would that solve the AP starved issue / bring more interaction, like half moon triggering the opposite eclipse and full moon triggering both eclipses?
Oh, what the fuck? That's OP.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
Probably
that would fix the problem.
Well, it would fix one problem. It'd fix the damage problem, but damage can just be fixed by tuning. Our dots would still be in a fucked state. That doesn't help dots.
Yeah, I'm still mad about the dot thing. Doesn't fix my problems.
Thanks, so mauled.
Same. Can Swiftmen be used on yourself when another character's hot is on you?
No.
It glows. The button, or not glows, but it lights up. You know, it's grayed out when you don't have any hots active, and it's not grayed out when there are other people's hots on you, but you cannot use it still. It's a neat trick.
Yay. How does balance compare to the other ranged specs in raid /M+, and how does it also compare to feral, which is your obviously melee counterpart in the same class?
All right, I'll field the feral one first.
Okay.
Everybody in here's off spec is like hunter or mage, straight up. Like nobody is ever going to play off spec melee as a ranged player. It's just like the unfortunate reality of the situation. Melee spots are heavily limited. You're not going to move a ranged player to feral unless I don't know. You'd be very hard pressed, and like feral would have to be that good. So I don't think I see a world where any of us would end up on feral.
Yeah, someone else in my raid would play feral if feral was good.
Okay, so you guys can answer the other part of that question.
What was the other part?
Compared to all range specs, not just feral, like just range specs in general for a raid and M+, how does Boomkin stack up?
I mean, I'm gonna say I think like playability. It's like I think it's okay compared to the other ones. I wouldn't. I feel like there's just I'm hoping there's still tuning to be done, because just on raw damage, like we're behind every ranged, all of them. So it's a little. I'm just hoping that's just a tuning thing that has to be done yet, but otherwise it plays mostly okay. It's not nothing too bad, other than the dot thing, obviously.
Let's put it this way. Every 3 minutes for 30 seconds, Moonkin does Warlock damage. But Warlock damage is on every minute. So why would you ever bring a Moonkin?
Well, the utility is top tier for Mythic Plus, though. Like, obviously for Raid, the utility is not great. But the mob control that it brings via Ursul's Vortex, Typhoon, Solar Beam is really good. Trees are incredibly good. Now you have Mighty Bash if you want it as well.
Hold on.
There's a lot of shit that you got.
You said Solar Beam is really good.
Solar Beam is
playing the same version of the game?
situationally very strong. I'm sorry, you're right. Solar Beam is situationally very strong.
Yeah, when you can AoE silence something, Solar Beam is great.
Its damage
But
is
that
bad.
happens in one dungeon per expansion.
You know what? You're right. You're right.
All the tools that Druid have in one class is pretty big. It's definitely on the top side. But I think there's maybe superior versions of that scattered across most other classes,
like Warlocks. What do you think about the suggestion that Starfall grants a damage bonus to our dots to make them better in AoE?
So basically that's Stellar Empowerment, which was in Legion, and that was taken away just outright, which is the start of the downfall. So I mean, yes.
We didn't touch on this when we were talking about legendaries, but Onit's the one that gives you a chance to proc a free Starfall or Star Surge when you cast the other. Part of why it was so good in Legion was because of Stellar Empowerment, but they removed Stellar Empowerment and just baked the dot damage bonus into our Mastery baseline, so that like makes that legendary worse on top of the other problems we discussed. The dots are just undertuned.
Okay. I'll combine these two questions in one because they kind of feel the same thing. Do you think having shooting stars scale with crit or haste would fix a lot of the issues in terms of dots and AP gen? And then the second part of it, which kind of is related, do you think it would solve most of Balance's problems to make the individual ticks of Moonfire and Sunfire generate AP? So both dot-related things, how do we fix the dot thing with resource gen?
The individual ticks, I think that would actually be interesting. As for the haste and crit stuff, I worry about, again, like Balance's scaling is so kind of scuffed right now. Basically, our secondary stats were already at like end game. Somehow we're already at like 9.3 secondary stat scaling with just some of the added power, like additive secondary stat power that we're gaining. So I don't see a world where that would make a ton of sense unless they fundamentally change a lot of the stuff that is giving us the secondary stat scaling, which I'm not that sure that it's gaining. But if it hit on per dot tick, that would be kind of cool. I think that like there is a Torghast power, which is the Orbit Breaker, which would have been interesting to see if it was like a legendary or something like that. Saying, do you want to talk on Orbit Breaker a little bit?
What?
Orbit Breaker. Would Orbit Breaker be cool for making our dots interactive?
What is that again? Sorry, I'm
Full moon on Moonfire.
full moon on Moonfire.
Every 20 ticks of Moonfire, you get a full moon. You get 40 extra power.
I didn't know the name.
Never mind. I'll just say it. Oh no.
That was one of the things I actually really wished. I mean, anything that like helps Moonfire and Sunfire be like more interesting to cast is like I'm 100% in favor. And that was one of the things I also like thought about is like, I mean, yeah, if you cast Moonfire and then every 20 ticks of full moon dropped and give you astral power and did damage like that, it'd be excellent. It'd help a lot in AoE.
All right. Two things here. What are your thoughts about adding IFE as a talent replacement for Twin Moons? And if Moonkin stays the same in their current tuning state, would you plan on maining? Oh, we already talked about the maining yet. So just the first part. What are your thoughts about IFE as a talent replacement for Twin Moons?
Yep.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Give me that.
Basically, IFE, for those who don't know, Impeccable Fell Essence was a Legion legendary, which, based on how much astral power you spent, gave cooldown reduction on Celestial Alignment or Incarn, whatever you were talented into. It was super sick. Very well liked as well. Balanced Druids fucking love anything that makes us not have a, as Gabe would quote, cringe 3-minute CD.
What if shooting stars generated more dynamic AP? As example, 2 to 5 non-crit, 5 to 8 crit.
Well, that would be a lot. That would be good.
I'll take
good,
it. I'll
good
take
at
it.
those numbers, I guess. I'm not a fan of adding random RNG for no reason, but
I think it's small enough that, I mean, it's not anything too big. I mean, I think it's okay, the change. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but
the crit interaction in general would be good. I just don't know about a dynamic range. I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, we are a dynamic class anyways, right? Like, we're not, like, basically what I mean whenever I say this, we're not scripted rotationally. We, like, gauge our astral power and kind of have to pre-plan movement and cooldowns and, like, whatever else is actually coming. So we're not as scripted as some other classes anyway. So I could see the dynamic AP not being the worst possible thing. I don't know.
provided they, of course, fix shooting stars, but
Of course.
Solar Beam idea. What are your thoughts? Give Moonkins normal interrupts like mages or shaman have, and for current Solar Beam, move it to a talent row of 35, which could buff up in a small interrupt, whatever it is, and it replaces Heart of the Wild. Therefore, you have a full talent row with CC-like abilities.
Oh, fuck.
That's smart.
I like that. That's 5 head.
Okay.
I like the current... okay, so apparently I'm in the minority here, but I actually like the current iteration of Solar Beam, right? I do actually like the situationally good aspect of it, like the 8-second blanket being strong in certain situations. There's also not a ton of kick heavy dungeons in Shadowlands. I mean, obviously Spires of Ascension is like the notable outlier here, but beyond that, there's not a ton of like kick heavy dungeons in Shadowlands like there were at least in BFA.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. There's some pretty rough areas in some of the dungeons, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean Spires is like a notable exception where you need like a double melee kick for the Goliath for the fist, and then like everything is just beating you down.
Can one of you guys please briefly go over how like a DPS opener looks on Boomkin right now on beta?
Sang, please take it away. I don't know the answer.
I mean, with the like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it could be optimized, but I mean, you're just looking at with the boat legendary. If you're playing that, I mean, you're just essentially pulling the full astral power and macro spamming all of your CDs, and then just blasting Star Surge. But and then it's just Solar Wrath until you're.
In terms of scripted opener, balance has actually never been one to have like a very scripted opener that matters a lot towards like the success or downfall to your damage. More often than not, you just kind of precast 2 wraths, pop your cooldowns, and you just kind of go.
Well, now that Incarn doesn't give us 30 AP, it's a little more involved than that. We have to sit there and...
Oh, it's off GCD, so we incarnate 0 seconds too, dude.
No, that's not right. That's not right. You don't have any AP, man. You gotta build the AP first.
You're not playing Nature's Balance?
Okay, you have 50 AP, but like, you want to go... You need more.
But yeah, no, that's all you do. You just get full astral power, and then you blast fucking all your cooldowns in a macro, and then just.
All right, you're right.
Don't talk about Moonfire, Sunfire. It doesn't matter, man. They don't.
So. Tettles.
Sang is so maul to Moonfire and Sunfire. This is. I didn't know that he was going to get this tilted. Like over the course of the whole entire show, Sang has literally slumped further and further into his chair, and he's just like, "Dude, Moonfire and Sunfire. Oh my fucking god."
Since you guys all. Or everybody seems to hate Star Surge during AoE spam. How would you feel if Star Surge Spender had a second effect when Starfall is active to make it splash?
Stop that. I don't want to press that button on AoE. It's just the concept of pressing the button on AoE which tilts me at this point.
Yeah, it's like... that seems like so needless, though. You know, just make Starfall stack. That's got to be easier than making... Star Surge splash, right? I mean, it is a solution. I don't know if it's a good solution, but it is a solution.
I'm just scrolling down here, trying to avoid as many questions such as if I dislike Boomkin, why do I have to reroll Warlock? A lot of those going around right now, thanks to you guys.
Because you picked a hybrid. If you care about performance, and performance is the only metric of success for you, I would highly recommend playing something that has multiple DPS specs. If you don't care, like myself, I am literally just going to play Moonkin regardless. I am going to continue playing Moonkin. Like, honestly, that's the truth of the matter. Like, if your only metric of success is how your spec or class is performing and you are a Thotum player, I would highly advise staying away from hybrids.
Do you think... I mean, like, back in the day, their mentality shifted from this, but, like, many years ago and expansions ago, like saying, Gape, you guys were probably there back then, but, like, their philosophy was that hybrids should be penalized for damage because they're hybrids. But according to them, like, that stuff's gone away. Do you guys still feel like that's actually the case, or...?
I don't know.
Penalized.
Based on what Tettles is saying here, right? Like, Tettles feels hybrids are kind of screwed a lot of the time.
You feel penalized because you don't have another option if the spec is, like, undertuned. Like, even if AF lock is bad or Demo lock is bad, like, Destro is still there. It's like that for all of those classes. More often than not, they're going to have one that's good. I think that's what he's talking about. It's kind of a penalty, but, like, not really, you know? It's just a fact of life. If you don't have 3 DPS specs, like, eventually you're gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean that was more the point. Like in Moonkin, they do normally a pretty good job of keeping it tuned to relevancy, right? They don't let it just get totally out in the gutter like they do for some specs. Survival Hunter, Arcane Mage, like stuff like that. They don't really let it just sit in the gutter for an extended period of time because there is only one spec like that. But at the same time, you only have one spec to play, so you're really at the whim of tuning.
The next one, it kind of actually dips into what you guys are saying. Do you think your average player listing in their group and group finder, etc., is concerned with most of the concerns you guys have for Boomkin, or is this more of like a, hardcore crowd issue that we're picking apart here, or are the problems with Boomkin are they so prominent that it actually trickles down, and you think it'll start to affect a more casual base of Boomkin players?
I think everything like that trickles down. Even if, like, we sit here and say, well, yeah, we raid in a world first guild, so obviously we're gonna play, like, the best, like, percentile DPS or sit on the bench, and you don't have to worry about that. Even if we say that, like, people are still gonna be like, oh, Moonkin's trash, I have to re-roll now? Oh, my favorite player or whatever is not playing Moonkin, so it must be unplayable. Like, I think that's what goes through people's heads. And I don't know, it just kind of sucks. But most people honestly shouldn't worry about it. Like, we're voicing our concerns about the spec because it has problems that we feel need to be addressed, but for the majority of the player base, it's not like it's unplayable. It's not like Windwalker in, like, the current patch of Live, right? Where it does 30-40% less damage than other specs, right? The gap is not insurmountable.
I mean, the biggest thing I wanted to get the biggest point I wanted to get across here is that for some situations, most notably on AoE, it's just not fun.
Fair. You mean like Star Surge?
Fucking one more time, dude. I'm gonna end it.
What if Solar Beam has a half CD when it hits one target only?
That fixes the problem.
Okay.
That straight up fixes the problem right there. 30-second CD is fine. Yeah. That actually makes it probably one of the best kicks in the game. I mean, like, obviously there's like drawbacks of having a 30-second kick, not a 15, but even still, that's pretty good.
What are your thoughts on Starfall spreading Moonfire gradually over time for AoE?
I like that.
I mean, what's the point?
Twin Moons is dead, bro. Crap.
Moonfire doesn't do anything.
All right, Sang. I don't. That's actually really good change, though, man.
What? Doesn't help.
Alright, hear me out. What if Twin Moons was baseline, Stellar Flare was deleted, and that talent row was just Stellar Drift 3 times? That'd be fine, right?
Spelled with different vowels.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, any suggestion like that is good, but I feel like, it's like, it doesn't. I mean, it's not.
Do you think that getting rid of the DR on secondary stacking effects, would that like fix anything for Boomkins? Is this even a problem for Boomkins? The whole DR after 25% thing?
Nope. Mastery is so good that you will just shove as much mastery as you could fit.
We're already capped on the other good stat. Oh, you're gonna have a stack versatility? Hell no.
How do you guys feel about something like Frost DK Killing Machine for dots, which when dots crit, you get a critical Star Surge Starfall, which makes both dots and secondary stat scaling more meaningful?
Can chat design next expansion's version of Boomkin? They have some pretty good ideas.
Damn, so your chat's like a bunch of well-cultured individuals who have very
high
massive
IQ
brains.
Geniuses. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Some, I mean, I don't know, man. You got this like Tettles guy in here and stuff.
I'm not in chat.
You were earlier. Given how so much of Moonkin power is based around Incarn, do you think we will be an ideal candidate for PI over Lock Mage?
This is an interesting one. I think it's close, actually. I think that's
Explain.
worse. It's worse. It's worse than AF right now. It's worse than AF right now, but it is actually really close damage-wise, and it just comes down to numbers stuff. I think that if Moonkin gets into a spot where it's not doing just cataclysmically low damage, that it could be the benefactor of PI over Warlock. It's just numbers, but
All right. How about the numbers of we don't want haste, especially during our cooldown, because we're already capped.
fuck everybody else. Do I want it?
On the topic of the utility stuff, couple more questions here. On the topic of utility stuff that we talked about, would you be willing to let go of some of this situational utility in order to get a more raid-wide benefit, like, you know, AI or the magic debuff or something like that? Like the trade-off, is that worth?
Okay, I'll start. I don't want it because I care more about Mythic Plus than I do Raid.
Okay. I guess opposite for the other two guys.
Probably.
A little weird, Tettles.
I care more about Mythic Plus than I do Raid, man. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, it's just a matter of fact. I like Mythic Plus more. I don't know. So I would rather not have the Raid buff. I'd rather fucking just deal with it.
I mean, it would also carry over into Mythic Plus, yeah. It's not like it's gonna get turned off in a 5-man dungeon.
The way I understood it is that you're losing like a substantial amount of our utility, right? Like we would lose Typhoon and Ursels or something like that, right?
Yeah,
would you give up Typhoon?
Exactly.
Would you give up Typhoon and trees for a Raid buff?
Yeah, fuck my tank. I don't want to press trees.
All right, fair. Never
I
mind.
mean, it's very like I said, like a lot of the utility buttons are like generally much more impactful in Mythic Plus, just because more mobs are more susceptible to like CC, whereas in a raid, that's like bosses are that doesn't happen on a boss, and maybe it like adds like if there's a boss with that adds like generally there's like already you got plenty of other classes that are commonly brought that have like a stun. It's like AoE stun. I mean, I don't know. It'd be like it's definitely something that you could do, but
I think it just depends maybe which crowd you're talking to, right?
yeah, I think it's very.
The PvPers would rather have the utility as well. They don't want the raid buff.
PvPers would definitely want the more focused CC.
All right, we're running low on time here, so 2 more questions, guys. What do you think? What do you guys think about ignoring your Eclipse state at a certain point in AoE because Starfire is still better in Solar Eclipse depending on the number of targets?
Well,
that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care too much. Maybe okay. So some people actually just have like a fundamental problem with Starfiring in Solar Eclipse. I don't care. I think it's just whatever.
Depends on the amount of mastery you have too, right? Like, the more mastery you have, the less, or the more targets you need to have to Starfire during a solar eclipse. I'd say most of the time it's not going to be a problem. But I mean,
it was early on with like bad stats, right?
Yeah. But like, what is the problem with pressing your cleave ability just because you're not glowing yellow right now? Like, it's still a cleave ability versus a single target ability. Doesn't it feel good to have that choice? Like, unironically, you have a choice that you can make between doing priority target damage or spreading it out more. That's actually a good thing.
I like it, yeah. I don't care, rather.
All right. Any thoughts, Sang?
Nope.
All right.
Does it help you for Torghast?
All right, last question. This one always comes from me. If we lived in a magical world, which we don't, but let's just pretend we do for a second, where covenants were sheerly based on aesthetic and lore and immersion and all that, absolutely nothing to do with player power, which covenant would you take?
You guys want to all like count it down and say it at once, or?
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Night
Fae. Yep.
Who said Venthyr? No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, Night Fae is the druid class fantasy. Like straight up, it is.
So
you turn into
actually,
a Vulpine fox, like it's like literally the most druid shit.
what I would find interesting, and I feel like this is going to happen, at the end of Shadowlands, the Covenant abilities are going to become a talent row for most classes. Just a new talent row.
Did you also think that the artifact abilities would become a part of the talent row for classes?
It would have been nice for the Covenants to be more of a tint on all of your abilities, right? And to have that theme, and then just the Covenant abilities to be a talent row. That would have been nice, but you know.
Dude, we could go down this rabbit hole for fucking hours.
Okay, yes, that's why I don't want to, but I'm just saying.
The can of worms
that's
must
what it should've
remain
been.
closed right
Wouldn't
now.
it be
Yeah,
nice if we could
you gotta
keep
stop
some of our
this.
borrowed power? That'd be kind of cool, right, guys?
One, please, bro. One borrowed power.
All right, dudes. Final thing here is we always end these shows with like a final thought from you or address. It could be anything. It could be like a wish list thing, like we talked about, an address to the devs, the Boomkin community, whatever you want. Just final thought before we head off. Tettles, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I guess as a whole, I'm actually pretty happy with the state that Boomkin is in. Just generally speaking, all tuning aside, I'm fairly happy with how it is. I feel like it's definitely one of the more thought out and more well-rounded specializations that is going into Shadowlands, but it still has some problems on its own. If I had to fix something, I think that like the general astral power stuff from dots plus stackable starfall would be like the absolute way to go in the correct direction if you were a developer who is watching this currently.
Okay, Sang.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's just it's definitely been steps in the right direction. I just think that there just needs to be a little more love given to our dots to make it back to its like full toolkit of like every spell kind of matters, because right now those are like the two that just I feel like are insignificant. And other than that, I think this class is in a decent state for sure. And then just number tuning obviously needs to happen. Hopefully it's still down the line and not done. Otherwise, see ya.
All right, Gabe.
Yep. Number tuning, dot tuning, cooldown, too powerful, no damage outside of cooldowns. Those are all the easy to fix things. They're obviously like talent shuffling they could do, or like talent buffs. They could make some of the talents interesting instead of never taken for 3-4 expansions. I think I'm just dreaming about that, I guess, though. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But like the other stuff, easy. Please help. I want to play the game and not the bench.
Alrighty. Powerful words. Guys, I know we got to get to raid testing, most of us, so thanks a lot for hanging out today, dudes. I appreciate it for the in-depth Boomkin talk. And I hope, and we never know, but I'm sure you'll get some numbers tuning. Hopefully in the dot department coming up, but
I suspect the numbers will be 10.
Yeah, I suspect so too. Nonetheless, guys, thanks a lot for hanging out. I appreciate it, taking a bunch of time out of your morning or afternoon here to chat everything Boomkin. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure I will catch up with you guys at some point later in the expansion. Should do some more of these shows, and we'll see the state of Boomkins then.
That'd be sick.
Thanks for having us, man. It was
Thank
fun.
you for having us, Salute.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming. Have fun at raid testing to the 2 limit guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
Later,
Thanks
dudes.
for having me.